Yes, Nathan Wade in the Georgia case will be stepping down. Fani Willis effectively wins. All that's really happening now with this removal is that the judge said, well, there's an odor of mendacity, but, we're just going to just say stop working together. So Fani Willis gets to keep doing whatever she wants. She's been accused of perjury. She's facing a potential perjury inquiry. Nathan Wade, all the same. There were 3 individuals, I believe, who have been accused of perjury in that hearing. And the judge just goes, oh, whatever, I guess. Now, the funny thing is, this woman is charging many of Trump's lawyers and Trump personalities with lying to law enforcement or obstruction and things of that nature. Yet she is now being accused of the same thing. And the judge, he's a coward. I can't say I'm surprised. We talked a little bit about this morning on the Culture War podcast, but we'll talk about that. And, I got a good one. There have been a ton of stories. I don't know if you've seen of Boeing jets, wheel falling off. We got a new story right now. Side panel falls off. We've got one leaking fuel or something. Emergency landing, turn around. I don't know what's going on. But there's this Boeing whistleblower who they say in the media died of apparent suicide. The reporting now, and this is from Jalopnik, this is not a conservative source, is that he told his friend, I am not suicidal and don't believe it if they say I killed myself. Seems like we have a conspiracy. But we'll get into that. We got a bunch of other stories to get into as well. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com and pick up your coffee. Appalachian Nights is the undisputed champion of the coffee sales because we're already sold out of the coffee pods. We just reloaded them. I'm desperately trying to tell you guys, like, you got to buy Stand Your Grounds. It is really good. You give it a try. Stand Your Grounds is a medium roast. It tastes very much like Appalachian Nights, but I am honored that we have our one-hit wonder in Appalachian Nights, the coffee being so good. And Rise with Roberto Jr. is also great. It's light. It's a breakfast one. You can also pick up your Alex Stein's Primetime Grind, 2 times caffeine. Shout out to Alex Stein. But when you support Casper, you're supporting us because we sponsor ourselves. And you're helping us set up our first live location. Our coffee shop should be open in a few months. We already had our first event there on the 3rd floor. Second floor club is currently being set up. And we're hoping to have another event next month. But also don't forget to become a member at timcast.com to support our work directly. And click Join Us. Become a member, and you'll get access to our members-only Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded individuals. And they got pre-shows, they got after-shows, tons of content, people working on projects. The most important thing for a Timcast membership and everything we're doing is building culture and bringing everyone together. That means you guys sign up to become members at timcast.com, support the show, support all of our endeavors, and then connect to the Discord server so you can be in constant communication with other people who think and feel similarly or perhaps would want to debate you. And this is going to help create connections, which can help build a parallel economy. Maybe you have the next great idea and you don't know how to get it going again. So what you do is you become a member, you join the Discord server, you start talking to people, someone pops up and says, I'm a carpenter, I can actually build that thing right now. Bang, you've invented something new. We need to build those connections and get that parallel economy going. And once we get that live space up, the social club in Martinsburg, you can actually physically come hang out with people and have those conversations. And it is the communication between people that builds the culture, that invents new products, and that will help us win that culture war. So all in all, it also helps support the show and the work we do. So don't forget to also smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and everything else, we got a couple people. We got Liam Cosgrove.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me again, Tim. Good to be here. And I'm a reporter with The Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal's outlet. And it's good to be here.
Right on. And Rob's back. He was here this morning.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm Rob Noerr. I am probably the premier right-wing debater on this crazy Twitch YouTube debate sphere. So honored to be back again. Looking forward to it.
Right on. Hannah Claire's hanging out.
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm back again. I'm with SCNR News, or SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. I hope you guys are having a great Friday. Libby's here.
I'm here. I'm Libby Emmons. I'm with the Post Millennial. Glad to be hanging out, y'all.
And I am not Surge.gov. It's Kellen. I'm filling in tonight.
Is that what you changed it to?
No, but I like playing fun with them with that one. But yeah, let's get into it.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the big news breaking from this morning. Now, we do know. I think we jump to this right here. Nathan Wade is he's stepping down. He's a special prosecutor who was appointed by Fani Willis. And after the judge ruled, basically nothing's going to happen. She's allowed to keep her work going. She won't be taken off of this case. I can't say I'm surprised. When the judge dismissed 6 charges against the Trump defendants, 3 against Trump personally, many people were saying that this is evidence that the judge will not rule against Fani Willis. What we're hearing now in the press is that the judge wants to split the baby. That's what everyone's saying. Split the baby. As anyone knows, when you split the baby dies.
That's a problem.
And so if the issue here is that Judge Scott McAfee was trying to prevent, I don't know, what's the right word? Acrimonious conflict or whatever, how are we doing it? Conflict in general. He's certainly done the opposite. And he has, as the coward he is, the spineless, pathetic man that he is, flicked a match into the tinderbox. Because the appropriate move for this spineless piece of trash would have been to say, if you don't want there to be conflict, you must stop the conflict. So which he should have said, what we're going to do is, to avoid the image of partiality and bias, we will politely ask Miss Willis to please step aside and we will have someone else come and take up this case. This is not indicative of wrongdoing on Miss Willis. It's indicative of the integrity of the court and our attempt to appear impartial as we bring justice about. Instead, he's terrified what the left would do if he even tried to be impartial. So he said, burn the whole thing to the ground. And there we are.
Yeah, it's a rough time for him because he's also in the middle of a re-election campaign. So I don't know if that will hurt. I don't think it will help him in his district. But he said before this wasn't political. He's staying biased. You know, a lot of eyes were on him in this decision. And I thought the language of like, well, either Willis and her entire office can go, or Wade can step down. So you guys make a decision. Whatever you think was he was really trying to walk a weird line.
It's another irony in every single legal case, the lawfare against Trump, every single time. They do exactly what they're accusing Trump of. So they're charging him with RICO and racketeering and perjury. I mean, the worst thing she's accused of doing is intimidating witnesses, which is incredibly serious. And yet she's allowed to stay on this case. The reason is quite simple. Just like with Jack Smith, they need to get this case in before the election. This is all about election interference. So they're worried, well, if we remove her from the case and bring someone else on, perhaps this won't come about before the election. Make no mistake, this has nothing to do with justice. It is completely about interfering in the election and trying to save the American people because they know they're going to get a guilty verdict because the left is nuts and they don't care. They'll indict Trump for anything. It doesn't matter if he did it or not. It's all about impugning him and interfering in the election, which, by the way, is the very thing they say that Trump tried to do, which makes him an authoritarian.
I suppose the issue, the question is, does this hurt Trump or help him more that he's being targeted, indicted? Because the one thing it is doing is making sure that Trump can't campaign. While Trump is locked up in court, going to Florida, trying to get dismissals and things like this, you've got Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and they're going out and they're campaigning. What, Kamala Harris, you went to like a Planned Parenthood or something?
Yeah, in Minnesota.
They're cheating. This is cheating. Democrats
definitely cheating.
are cheating. And the question is, does it actually hurt Trump though? Because many people have made the argument that his polls go up when we see things like this.
Well, his polls do go up when we see this kind of thing. And I think that a lot of people also see that the way that Trump is being targeted is in many ways the way that Americans are being targeted. We have the DOJ going after moms and parents at school board meetings, including a father whose daughter was, allegedly raped in the school bathroom, and the DOJ went after him. We have the DOJ going after Catholics who prefer Latin Mass, all based on just one guy's information, and they extrapolated that. You have the Biden administration still saying that white supremacy and domestic extremism are the biggest threats facing the United States while the border is collapsing. You have Haitian immigrants are about to flood the country. The Biden administration has a program in place where 30,000 refugees can come into the U.S. from very specific countries, including Venezuela and Haiti, two countries that have definitely been in the news lately. We've seen a lot of crimes lately in the U.S. committed by Venezuelan asylum seekers, and we're about to have that kind of stuff going on probably from
asylum seekers.
That's what they say. That's how they make it legal. Asylum seekers. And this guy, Jose Ibarra, who is accused of killing Laken Riley in Georgia, he was an asylum seeker. And a story out from the New York Post quoted his wife saying that the reason they got married, she had a 5-year-old from a previous relationship, and she said the reason they got married was so that they could join up their asylum cases and have a better shot at gaining asylum. And now it turns out that, he's a murderer.
That's the beginning of a rom-com. But that's such a great reason to get married.
It's a meet cute. Oh. But the other thing, too, that we see in Michigan and Wisconsin, we're also seeing the states there, the attorney generals there, going after electors who were on the alternate slate of electors. So Americans who are locked up in the legal system for these kind of crazy charges, the J6ers, all of that, they can see what's going on. I think what would be great for Trump is if he got a VP pick, and the VP pick could go out there, someone who's really good at campaigning. That's what we want to see, someone who can draw crowds.
Well, and this is one of the things Nikki Haley used against Trump. She gave a speech saying, Trump spends more time in the courtroom than on the campaign trail, right? Everyone who's against Trump points to his legal issues and says, look, he's not committed to you as voters, when really I think his true supporters are like, you guys are doing everything you can to bind his wrists to the wall and keep him from running.
Right.
It's
and
crazy.
she was even one of the people saying we have to tie this up before the election. We have Trump's attorneys out there every day, like pushing it back and pushing it back. And I correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but Alvin Bragg in New York, he said he elevated the 34 counts of falsifying business records. These are misdemeanors. He elevated them to a felony, and he still hasn't given any explanation for how they're a felony. They can only be a felony if they were in commission to a greater crime, and he still hasn't said what that crime is.
Well, because they're liars and they're corrupt and they'll just do whatever they want.
That's exactly right.
And remember, that charge that Bragg's charging with has to do with campaign finance non-disclosures, a crime that we know Hillary Clinton committed.
Well, Hillary Clinton paid $8,000 in a fine for that.
Right. That's her
$8,000.
That's constantly the theme.
And the DNC had to pay a much larger sum of money. But Hillary Clinton did the same thing. She got fined $8,000. And Trump is, what, do you think they're going to fine him $8,000 for the same crime?
You go back to the FAR violation.
$8,000 million.
And her crime, she said that money paid to her attorneys was for legal fees. And it was actually money paid to her attorneys to create the Steele dossier.
Right. And you go back to like every single one of these charges, the FAR violations against Trump's campaign manager. We talked about this morning a little, right? That same crime was committed with the Podesta Group, which was the campaign manager of Hillary Clinton. And yet they're allowed to receive retroactively filing paperwork. You have Hunter Biden who committed FAR violations. Every single one of these crimes, the problem isn't that they're charging the crimes. The problem is the two-tier justice and selective prosecution. The entire Russia collusion story was as follows. We had to break some eggs. We had to break the law because the allegation's so serious that Trump may have colluded with Russians. And how did they seek to prove it? By Hillary Clinton colluding with a Russian spy and the FBI allowing it to get dirt to illegally spy on Trump. Every single time what they accuse Trump of is exactly what they're doing.
Well, somebody has to pay for their crimes, and it's not going to be them.
It's absolutely true. And like, you have to look at like with Fani Willis here. Again, they say that they're against even the appearance of impropriety. Go back and look when you had James Comey was fired, and so they have the Mueller report. Mueller was the basically advisor of James Comey, his mentor. That committee had 17 Democrats on it, and including 2 lawyers that worked for the Hillary campaign. And I said at the time, I was like, if there's ever a right-winger that does a special counsel, they'll lose their mind. We have the Her report. And just because this guy, saluted an American flag or something at some point in his life, they're like, he must be Republican. They're so jaded and they're so entitled that the left wing and the Democrat perception of things is we not only expect special prosecutors and the FBI to let us off the hook, they're not even allowed to say a bad word about us while we do it. That's the double system that we have, where they literally are let off the hook for obvious crimes. But if someone like Comey says, but it was bad, or Her says, yeah, the president's losing his marbles, they say that's not good enough that he let him off the hook. It's the double. This country cannot survive this sort of double standard. This is the real election interference. And unless we stand up and do something about it, we're going to be in a really bad place. I mean, I think
they hired Scott Pressler.
That's
wait, real quick. Did they hire Scott Pressler, or they're just like working with Scott Pressler?
I think they're in talks to hire him, right?
They announced that he's going to come.
Okay,
on
that's
and
huge.
Stuff, yeah.
That guy is one of the most effective organizers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a good step.
I think it's a really good step. I think it's inspirational. I mean, Scott's young and he's really boots on the ground. He's involved and he's extremely passionate. This is the kind of thing that I think young conservatives are really looking for in the party. They want someone who wants to take action, do something, and is sort of relentless. I mean, that's the thing you can say about him. He just will not stop. And they need that kind of energy right now.
And I think there's a lot of hope that you see people like that, shows like this. Like, the truth is, you're not going to get from the legacy media or the establishment Republicans like the Mitch McConnell. They don't care. They don't care that this is happening to Trump because they look at Trump as their enemy. They would rather be the people in charge of a losing party then lose their position in a winning party. They don't want that. And so it's up to average people, regular people that are empowered by social media and other places, to show the American people how bad this double standard is and how corrupt it is and how it is actual election interference. And I see hope when you see people like Scott Pressler being put forward, when you see that the mainstream media is losing their legitimacy, when you see that Trump's poll numbers are going up, in large part because people are like, even if I don't care for the man individually, we can't stand for this two-tiered system. And we'll see what happens. The corruption's going to be insane.
I think we've got cultural problems in this country between these cultish individuals who don't care what's right or wrong. They just hate Trump. And so they're going to march in lockstep no matter what happens. There's not going to be a point where someone says, you know what, this two-tiered system is bad. We shouldn't allow it. No. Now, if Trump ends up winning, and then Trump says, I think we should enforce the law, they're going to claim it's a two-tiered system and he's targeting us. Help.
I mean, we talked about it a little this morning. Just take this one little example. Ari Melber, I think MSNBC, right? He comes out when Elon was talking about buying X, and he says, can you imagine if Elon Musk bought this? What if he censored a Democratic candidate? What if they shadow banned Democratic arguments? They're so entitled. They weren't worried that Elon was going to come along and do to them what they did to us. They were worried that he would just stop them doing it. And so they put these hypotheticals out there like, wouldn't it be terrible if Trump did to us what we're doing to him and his supporters? And I'm sorry, I can't stomach the double standard and hypocrisy from these people anymore. If any one of us here at this table, if we were on a jury, it wouldn't matter if we liked or disliked.
Grab the mic. Pull the mic up.
Sorry. It wouldn't matter if we liked or disliked the person. We would try our best to be fair. These left-wing people believe they are morally superior to us to the point where they don't care. Show me the person and I'll show you the crime. And so every one of us know, in every left-wing area, they will convict Trump of anything. Facts be damned. They don't care. And how can you live in a society where we say, hey, we want to be fair to you. We might think you're stupid. We might disagree, but we wouldn't want to lock you up. 28% of people in a YouGov poll in, I think, 2022, 28% of Democrats polled said they wanted to take your children away if you refuse the vaccine. How do you live side by side with people that want to do the most heinous thing imaginable?
Well, Republicans have no counter at all. We talked about this morning as well, but it's here. There's no U.S. attorneys. There's no district attorneys. There's no Republicans in any state. There's no governors. There's no AGs. Let me pause. Obviously, Ken Paxton has some stuff going on. So, how about that? And but even Ron DeSantis is not really doing that much. And really what it comes down to is these district attorneys. I mean, this Fani Willis is a Fulton County. She's a county DA. She's a prosecutor for she's a district attorney. She is not a governor. She is not a senator. She is not a high-powered federal official. She is not she's not even a sheriff.
Like
county.
Bragg. Yeah.
And Letitia James. Now, she's state, but then you've got Bragg. Where is a single Bumpkinville prosecutor to be like, well, gee, I guess I'll charge Joe Biden with racketeering.
I don't understand
And then he
either.
files the charges, and they go, sir, you represent a county of like 3,000 people. Well, that's the law. No, that's not even happening.
I don't understand that
It's
either.
like, file the paper, send it in. Nope, they won't do it.
Yeah, that's something Charlie Kirk was talking about a while back. He was like, let's sue Biden. Like,
Sue, criminally charge him.
I mean, Ken Paxton, you're right, is suing the Biden administration for a lot of stuff, but it's very
How about this?
Texas and border localized, which is
And the
super
Bush
important.
How about this? Joe Biden, where was he when he had the conversation with his ghostwriter? Do we know? Was it in Delaware?
I think it was in his Delaware home.
So Delaware, he's protected because ain't no Delaware person going to go after him. But hold on. Joe Biden lied. He said at a meeting that he did not tell his ghostwriter that he did not tell him any classified information. Okay. How about we start here? I'm sure there's a lot of better things you can do, but Joe Biden, the Democrat, they fundraise. Joe Biden's campaign fundraises. So if he lies in his fundraising, fraud charge.
Right.
Fraudulent. He is lying to people in exchange for money. That's fraud in your district. They're going after Trump on the same documents charges that Hillary, Biden, and Obama, Clinton, everyone should have faced. None of them should have been charged for this. And Matt Gaetz says, look, nobody should be charged for these things. But they're going after him because they're trying to find anything they can. Why are there no Republicans simply saying, if you accepted any amount of money in my state and you lied, and he did, and come on. then I'm sorry, you're going to have to, you're facing criminal charges for fraud. We're going to investigate you. How about the solicitation of donations from Kamala Harris for the terrorists during the George Floyd riots?
Yeah, the Minnesota Bail Fund.
I mean, there you go. That's material support for terrorism.
Yeah,
That is clear example of, quote, engaging in an insurrection, which is what the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that they tried to get.
Now, here's the best part. We know for a fact that in all across this country, every single state had some kind of riot or another. So if you're in a conservative state or Republican state, you need to contact the local. Let me put it this way: if you know that far leftists, BLM, which is an organization, they rioted in your town or somewhere in your state, you should be calling your DA and asking why they are not going after Kamala Harris for providing material support to terrorists. Kamala Harris directly posted bail fund. Let's raise money for these people. So she's raising money for a group that engaged in acts of domestic terrorism. And now you may be saying, come on, it's BLM riots. You're calling it domestic terrorism. That's the point. Trump didn't engage in insurrection. How many states went after him for this? The point is, we talked about it this morning. The Republicans aren't fighting fire with water. They're not fighting fire with fire. I'm like, I will take wheat flour, unbleached wheat flour, throw anything on the flames to make it stop. They won't do it.
Well, that's one of the great things. I think it was a really good move putting Laura Trump in the RNC chair. She came in, right? She fired a bunch of people, just like her father-in-law would have, which I think is, really, I think that is a little bit fire, bringing in Scott Pressler, who has a proven track record of voter registration and getting votes out for the GOP. So I think that we might really start to see a different tact from the RNC, and it's really quite about time. This is an RNC now with Laura Trump in charge that is interested in winning, and I think is going to make that happen.
Let's jump to something that affects everyday Americans. Politics can be a bit esoteric, but we have this story. Boeing United Airlines flight lands in Oregon after losing a panel mid-air, the latest in a lengthy list of safety incidents for the embattled plane company. Here we go. Here's another one from Business Insider. The sudden drop of a Boeing 787 that injured 50 people may have been caused by a flight attendant accidentally hitting a switch in the cockpit, report says. I just want to ask, how does a flight attendant accidentally hit a switch in the cockpit?
Isn't she not supposed to be in the cockpit?
What is she doing in there?
Right? Aren't they supposed to lock those doors?
I don't want to imply impropriety here.
She was just bringing them coffee.
I think we should.
Let's all assume
she
imply impropriety.
She dropped something, was reaching down to pick it up, and then she went up and she realized she missed and she had to go back down again.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then on the way
She was
up,
just
she hit her head on
dropping
the.
something. Yeah.
That's right. And then she hit her head on the controls. I'm kidding, by the
She's
way.
just hanging out. What are you guys
She
doing?
may have just been bringing
That's
in
actually
coffee.
very plausible, to be honest. I mean, I don't see how you accidentally hit a switch. I mean, there's switches all over on those cockpits that you wonder how they even keep flying the
Track
plane.
them.
Or what if it's
But
like the Alaska Airlines guy who was
I guess
like,
you could fall. Turbulence, you could fall, your butt hits a bunch of switches.
There could be an accident. But
She
what if it's
slipped
like the
and fell in
Alaska
his lap.
Airlines guy who was like riding whatever the jump seat, and then he all of a sudden was like, I can't do this, ripped his headphones off and pulled it. Do you remember this story from a little
What?
while ago? Yeah, the Alaska
The guy on
Airlines
drugs?
He said he hadn't taken drugs in several hours. He was just having a hard time and hadn't been sleeping. He was the one charged with attempted murder.
Yeah,
at one
yeah,
point.
yeah. I thought he was on
got
shrooms
pled
or
down.
something.
He was 3 days before. I don't know how long it lasts. But I mean, you know what I think is going to be really trendy this year? The road trip. I feel like that's really making a comeback. Break out all of your mimetic architecture and your fun billboards. We're not getting on planes this year.
I have been I have to travel a lot, and I keep being like, how far a drive is that? I do love my car.
I did that
happy to drive
recently
it.
because it's like when you have to go to the airport and then you're at the airport and you have to go away from the
You
airport.
gotta factor in that time. You gotta factor in the sitting around
Right.
time.
Depending on the flight length, you could do like a 6-hour road trip in the same amount of time it would take you to fly somewhere.
I just drove 9 hours the other day. I was like, it's totally fine.
So my questions on this are, one, does anyone here know, because anecdotally this does seem like it's happening a lot more, but does anyone know statistically how much more frequently this is happening? And two, I don't think there's yet to be a death, right? There was that one where the exit door flew off, but no one flew out with the door.
Yeah, but that was only because the guy was wearing his seatbelt.
Yeah.
and the two people who were supposed to sit
No,
there
it's
didn't
crazy.
get on the
I mean,
plane.
yeah, I normally don't wear my seatbelt, and when I sit in exit row now, I do wear it.
Oh, I
'cause
wear my
people got hurt.
seatbelt all the time.
But I'm just
50 people got hurt when this plane dropped suddenly and they all slammed into the ceiling.
That's
right.
messed up.
And then, I mean, it comes what do we think of the causes? I mean, I'm a libertarian, so I think the causes are probably the FAA is outliving its usefulness, and probably things are becoming too calcified, and
DEI.
there's also DEI.
You know who we should ask? The Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, who definitely knows what's going on.
Can you imagine you're on this flight, right? And Buttigieg is on there and you're like, oh my goodness, the stewardess hit that switch and they're all falling. And he'd be like, flight attendant, please. We don't use the term stewardess anymore.
That's really funny.
I mean, at what point do you, as in general, we don't know specifically what caused each of these, but when we live in a society that no longer rewards competence, and instead we reward sort of victimhood culture, these things are inevitable over time. You're going to see bridges collapse. You're going to see public transportation wrecks. You're going to see airplanes falling apart. We are being told that those are sacrifices. You, the average American, we have to sacrifice your safety. Why? Because it's important that we virtue signal. I find it to be one of the most racist, bigoted things imaginable. I think that we should reward I don't think people are inferior based on their sex or their race. I think we should reward people that are the best for the job, the most competent. But no, we're instead told that we have to have this racist mentality that, we have to promote certain categories of people. And again, I can't point to this incident or others at Boeing, but you see what Boeing's leadership's doing. You see how invested they are in DEI. Why don't you take a couple days and make sure your planes are safe before lecturing us about what pronouns we need to use?
So I agree that DEI is probably playing a role in this, but also let's think back to when in the 90s when we were all kids and we flew on planes and how the experience was almost identical, except you didn't have a TV in the back of the headset. To me, I look at it.
You don't anymore.
Sometimes you don't even have them.
No, they're all gone.
Those don't exist anymore?
Yeah, now you.
I swear I've seen
they have
them,
hooks for your phones.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they've got both. But the point is
depends on your plane.
Right.
I think,
but the point is this industry
anymore.
has not innovated in
I haven't seen one in a
30
while.
years.
When I was flying, it
So
doesn't matter.
is it surprising that it's slowly falling apart? I mean, we're still there's not a free market in airlines, so it's no surprise that the quality is going down. And part of the quality going down is sadly the literal integrity and safety of, the planes and the people who run them.
Well, yeah, hyper consolidation. So really, it's capitalism's fault. All the airlines started getting bought out by each other, and now there's 3.
Right, but the
Just
airlines
with the phone
are getting
companies.
multi-billion-dollar bailouts for when they're not even producing a product, and the barrier to entry is near impossible.
Well,
with,
Virgin Atlantic.
I actually-
we did end up with a new airline
Richard
a couple
Branson.
years ago. Yeah,
Thanks to Richard Branson, and
I mean, that was
and then someone else bought that one.
that was more. That was 15, 20 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not serious that I think
news.
capitalism is the problem, but I do think monopolization and
has no
centralization is
meaning.
the problem. When all these airlines buy each other out, there's no competition. So now it's in the United States, you have two choices. You have United and American. Sure, there's budget airlines
But wouldn't you argue that monopolization is a result of FAA making a huge barrier to entry? Also, I mean, it's hard to get permitting if you wanted to make a new airport to get a new route going. And
it's both.
And then flooding the industry with cash so they can buy each other out.
Nothing made these companies buy each other. And actually, they deregulated in the late 2000 mid to late 2000s, I think. Or when was the deregulation? Wages used to be way higher for airline workers, and then the government, because it was regulated, the airlines had to pay a certain amount. And then I don't know exactly what happened, but I used to work at O'Hare as a ramp. I was an acting crew chief, so a little bit above a ramp agent, but still basic. I was periodically in charge of the people who are loading planes. Sometimes loading planes myself. Crew chiefs are the ones who are in charge of the room, and they tell people to load planes. If you're acting, it's halfway there. You step in when someone's sick. But they were saying that before the deregulation, which I don't know exactly when that happened, people were getting the equivalent of $50,000-$60,000 a year. And then once the government said, okay, you're now allowed to pay these people whatever you want, we're going to step out of it. Skill levels dropped dramatically, service dropped dramatically, wages dropped dramatically. It used to be that they were going to hire someone to load a plane and they were going to pay them $60,000, $70,000 a year. So you were getting high quality candidates that had to pass scrutiny. The government then said, okay, we've been lobbied. We're going to get rid of this. Hire whoever you want. They immediately then said, this is a $7 an hour job and we'll take anyone who can do it. And then you ended up with something that's not better.
Fair enough. I mean, so you're kind of arguing. I mean, I don't know airline regulation to even make the argument. I just know from going through TSA and dealing with planes where you have to put the tray up before you land and take off, which seems ridiculous.
That's because of emergency exits and stuff.
Right, I know, but the fact that there's also, I mean, the fact that seats are still straight up. There's not an airline with beds or couches and things there's no diversity in the market.
Hold on. See, I got to stop you here.
Let me just make the point though. So I agree. I don't know a bunch about airline regulation. My point is that I can tell by using it that it's one of the most heavily regulated industries.
But you're
in the
wrong
world.
about what's going on with the inside of planes and why planes are the way they are. The airline industry has actually tried and attempted to change the way boarding works, the way seating works, and passengers reject it and they lose money, so they stop.
You're telling me you wouldn't fly, like if you could do a bed and coach, I don't care how
do you do a bed and
crowded
coach?
it. I don't. Well, you crowd them and you stack them together more closely, and you let if someone
they're
comes on
doing
a couple, they can
interlaced ones where there's the seats are above
Like that
you.
herringbone style?
I don't know how you describe it, but instead of having seats just like this, they're like that. So now you spread out the seats a little bit and put one right in the middle, and it's solid. So you're sitting, and you can actually everyone gets way more leg room. So if you're in the elevated seat, you can, you have more room, and I don't know how they are certainly trying those innovations.
Yeah.
But having worked for American Airlines, I worked for their regional American Eagle. For those that are familiar, the smaller jets, CRJs and Embraers. We always would ask, and like we directly talked to the people who are running the company, not like the executives, but like at O'Hare at least, supervisors and the higher ups. Why is boarding so stupid? Why does it take so long? People would ask us, what happens with our bags? And I'm like, well, like, dude, people need to understand. You'll get a viral video where it's like a guy outside throwing the bag. He'll pick it up and just chuck it in. And they're going, whoa, what's he doing with my bag? It's like, he's giving you $15 service. You don't want to pay money for your bags. So that guy gets paid $9 an hour. And when they fire him, they can only get another guy who gets paid $9 an hour. And they don't care about your bag. And for $9 an hour, they will kick your bag. If you want to pay more,
they might not just not care about your bag. They might hate your bag and hate you.
I will
That's
tell
how I
you,
would feel.
there were a lot of people in the bag room. So the bag room is where you sit in a chair and there's a conveyor belt and all the bags are going across and everyone has a zone. Behind them, they'll have 2 or 3 bag carts and it'll say above it something like OR. No, it wouldn't say ORD because you're at ORD, but it would say, CIT, CVG, or whatever. Those are your cities. If you see a bag with that city, grab it, load it on the cart. Those are yours. This one goes out twice a day. This one goes out twice a day. That one goes out once a day.
Right.
And there were guys in the bag room who would sit there and they'd see a big bag that weighs 50 pounds. And so what they would do is, as it's coming on the conveyor belt, they put one arm on it and then they spin to generate centripetal force and then boom, throw it ka-doom, into the cart and then sit back down because they were getting paid $9.75 an hour. When we'd ask like, hey, how come they don't pay more? It's like, so in order to actually be profitable, coach seats aren't actually that profitable. Business and premium economy are where they make most of their money. First class is I think actually very relatively low profitability, and coach is moderate, but business and premium are where the bulk of profit is generated. So they're like, there's a reason why we charge money for having your bags checked. We got to pay the bag checkers, right? Well, we can afford to pay them this. And then people make the argument, well, they're making all this profit, they're making billions in profit. The point is, certainly you can argue they can shave off their profits for their shareholders, but then there's fiduciary responsibility of the company to make sure they get a return to their shareholders where they can, which means they're always looking at ways to cut costs. Then here's what ends up happening. One of the easiest examples of the inefficiency of airlines is it would actually be more efficient if an airline just said, boarding has now begun, have fun, and let everyone just randomly storm in. That's more efficient than the way all the airlines do it now. Southwest is a different system where it's like you line up from like a row number or something and you choose whatever seat you get to. You have like a criteria or something. Mm-hmm. The way we board now is based on customer request. People don't want to board without their family and friends. So if we set up a more efficient system where it was like all window seats board, then all middle seats board, then all aisle seats board, that would be the fastest way to do it. But that would mean that husbands and wives would be split up. Parents and their kids would be split up and they all reject it outright. They're unwilling to accept these changes. And that's why everything is the way it is, because this is the highest return for the business over the past 70 years or whatever.
Right. So those things are fine. And I didn't mean to like start this deep dive into the airline industry. Like, I'm not talking about the logistics of bags and boarding process. I just mean, I'm a bit surprised that like the interior of planes and the experience is roughly the same as it was in the 1990s.
Because people don't want it.
Well, I mean, I want it. Like the experience in terms of the quality has not changed.
They got rid of
the quality of the seats, the quality of the planes too. I mean, the planes.
People don't want it. The reason why budget airlines are becoming so prominent and getting so much attention now is
great. Yeah.
because people are like, dude, I will stand up if you give me a flight for $50.
That was what the Ryanair guy
If
said.
it's short.
Remember
Right.
that the budget airline in Europe? He was like, everyone was like, he wants people to stand on the plane, and he was like, look, if you look at it, some of our flights are like 45 minutes. You're just literally jumping to the next country. You could stand for about that long on a bus sometime.
Well,
Why not?
and people
on
want
Amtrak too. Like I used to take the train from New York City
Yeah.
to Philadelphia a lot, and I would stand the whole time if there were no seats, like whatever. And even more if you take New Jersey Transit to the SEPTA in Philly, like
Yeah.
you could do like that. And if that's crowded, just stand. But you're paying $15 to get that whole way.
But let me just ask you, Liam,
Well,
why don't you
30.
fly first class?
Well, I mean, because first class is absurdly expensive. I mean, I don't think that the sorts of things I'm talking about, and again, like a lot of this is just kind of speculation. I don't think the sorts of things I'm talking about would be as expensive as first class. I think you could layer people into an airplane with beds where couples lay together. I'm talking very tight, like it'd be a little claustrophobic, but at least you could lay down so you're not sitting up straight for the whole flight. I think you could do that for much cheaper than first class. It might be a little more expensive than coaches now, particularly on like Allegiant and the budget airlines, which I love for short-term flights. I'm talking more about
Business
like,
class, premium economy.
Yeah, I mean
Like,
they are.
I guess
they're absurdly expensive. I think for how much.
I guess the idea you're presenting is they should create another class.
No, there should be just competition in the market, and you're saying there's
I
no competition
definitely-
because
yeah.
it hasn't. People don't want it. My assumption is because I just look at how regulated the industry is, where everyone gives you the same spiel before you sit down. There's these industry-wide regulations of like the tray tables and things like that, and I see, and it makes sense because they're airplanes. They
right, but the tray tables thing, I don't think is a good example.
I know it's kind of stupid, but
I definitely don't want to lay down next to other people on an airplane.
no, I'm talking no, yeah, you wouldn't lay down next to other people unless you're a spouse or something.
Even then, I don't.
But you can't control that because some people fly by themselves.
No, I know, and then you'd end up paying a bit more.
then you'd meet people in a really
Right, and-
interesting
and-
way.
well,
First of all, they are
Very
like
interesting way.
to my
Like,
point.
hello.
Like this bed and coach idea is actually being done right now. I don't know when it'll come to fruition, but this is an actual thing some airlines
doing
working on.
they're doing the interlaced seating, so you can actually lay underneath the seat that's in front of you.
Okay, so that's a similar kind of thing. Exactly.
But everyone made fun of it, insulted it, and people have basically mocked the concept because.
Well, has it come to market yet though?
I don't know if it's come to market. I think it was.
Okay, well let's see when it does. I mean, I'm just saying.
Here's the main issue.
You would agree it's one of the most heavily regulated industries, right?
Of course,
it should be.
airplanes.
I
There
mean,
you go.
you're taking human beings into the sky,
Right,
and then
tin
but also
can.
In a tin
to start
can,
an airline
yeah.
is already such a high capital.
But this is-
that you make. It's such a barrier to entry. I don't think it should be that regulated. Actually, I think I think the regulation is part of the reason we have planes falling apart now because government, bureaucracies.
Yeah, but I think it's bureaucracy and DEI.
Right. I think it's both too. No, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
The issue with the airline industry is, or with any industry, too many people. You don't matter. If there were 1,000 customers to a business, your say is massive. As a single customer, they're going to be like, we can't afford to lose even one. But with hundreds of millions flying, every month, all they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, look, 60% of people will literally sit on a mop bucket if it saves them money. We are not going to spend $50 million retrofitting our planes with bed seats.
It's
There's no point.
it's inelastic demand because people have to travel.
The way I solve this problem is I'm just like a redneck that never leaves rural Pennsylvania, and then no problem,
Wait, one counterpoint I just thought of, because you mentioned Virgin America. If everyone remembers when Virgin America first came to market, it actually was a way better experience than the rest of them. And then I think it's since been bought out by another company. Now it's kind of
My favorite
degraded.
thing
So-
about Virgin was when I first flew on Virgin Airlines, the safety video said, make sure you're wearing your seatbelt when the light comes on. If you don't know how to put on a seatbelt, something is seriously wrong with you. And they didn't explain it. I was like, wow.
Well,
that's a
something
bold move for your insurance
freaking
company to
out, yeah.
accept.
That's
I
like
mean,
when
we
people
all-
stopped saying leave a message after the beep,
Yeah.
on voicemail.
If you get
Does
lost
anyone
doing
have
this,
voicemail?
'cause-
Yeah, no, nobody has.
Has voicemail?
No, do you guys
Like, you
remember?
mean-
Yeah, for sure.
Answering
it
machines?
used to be, answering machines leave a message
We still
after the
have 'em.
beep. or
Oh, right.
whatever.
But everyone just knows how to.
now
What to do
people
now.
know how to operate voicemail.
Yeah.
They know to leave a message.
You know what the worst thing in the world is? People who have voicemails where they're like, hello?
Oh, I hate that also.
I can't hear you. I'm just kidding. Oh, it's a voicemail. I'm like, hang up.
Yeah, like, you're not funny leaving a.
Yeah,
I just
maybe
don't.
that's since
I just
answering machines
don't
got
leave
invented.
ever leave
Let's
voicemail.
let's get into the
My mom's
conspiracy
the
theories.
only one who leaves
Yes,
me voicemails.
here we go.
Here we go. Now, there's a reason why we brought up Boeing. Because as we're dealing with planes dropping from the sky, they didn't crash, but and people getting injured, and now I think there's been like 5 Boeing stories in the past week. Not to mention, before this, you had the corporate press insulting conservative commentators for warning that DEI in airlines was going to result in plane crashes. They're like, oh, these people are crazy. Now you've got a Boeing whistleblower. They say committed suicide. Here's from Jalopnik, which is not, this is a leftist obsessed with the culture of cars. They say, quote, it's not suicide. Boeing whistleblower warned friend before death. A family friend of Boeing whistleblower John Barnett says he warned her not to believe reports of suicide. That proves it.
Well, wasn't he in the middle of giving, he went to court, gave
He was
testimony,
giving depositions.
went to
He
his
had
hotel
more
room.
deposition.
Yeah, and then was like, nope, can't go any further. Like, that seems very bizarre to me.
I agree. And especially since, and he's been on this whistleblower kick since he left Boeing in 2017. And in 2018, 2019, we had huge plane crashes in like Indonesia and Egypt. You know, it was like hundreds and hundreds of people died. They said that it was because of faulty, I forget what it was, but there was like faulty parts and there was like stuff left on board that shouldn't have been there. And so if he's been on this kick that whole time, like why now in the middle of a deposition would he shoot himself?
Well, the question is...
He wouldn't.
Right. Is it a Vince Foster suicide where he shoots himself twice in the back of the head? Or an Epstein one where the cameras malfunction while guards fall asleep?
There was a pharmacy. I used to live in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
This one sounds more low budget.
There was a pharmacy, right? And the owner of the pharmacy was found dead in his office of apparent suicide, 2 shots to the head. And police were like, yeah, it's a suicide. And I'm like, yeah, okay, for sure.
Now, hold on. To be fair, it is entirely possible that someone shoots themselves twice in the head. Immediately. You're laughing? So some people often, they'll take the gun and they'll put it under their chin. And when they pull the trigger, the bullet ejects through their mouth and straight up.
Oh, and so
that is a gunshot wound to the head. And then there's something going, and then they'll take it and they'll put it to their temple. Not fun, not good, not okay.
Terrible.
People need serious help. But I want to make sure people understand context, because when the police then put it, like the coroner will put in the report, GSW head 2X or something, people go, what? That can't be suicide. And they're like, I think people need to understand there are people who have been shot in the head and they survive, like all the time.
Like in Fight Club too, at the end of Fight Club.
He blew out the back of his,
right.
out of his mouth, right? Because he was insane. But yes, that was a premise of the ending plot of Fight Club. So I just want to say that, not saying that who was Gary Webb? Was that his name?
In Fight Club?
No. The journalist who was exposing the CIA and then died of a suicide with 2 gunshot wounds to the head.
Yeah.
I'm still going to lean towards, he was probably killed.
Well, here's the thing. I say this about conspiracy theories in general, whether it be suicides, what have. It's not our fault that we're distrusting. With the legal system as bad as it is, where, remember we talked this morning about the whistleblower who can't be named, that went after Trump, right? Like, remember that? Remember when whistleblowers were like sacrosanct and they were heroes? And then you had whistleblowers that came out and said, hey, the Biden administration and the FBI under Chris Wray's targeting us because they wanted us to go after, we spoke up about going after parents at school board meetings, or the IRS whistleblowers. We wanted to look into Hunter Biden's stuff. Like now all of a sudden whistleblowers, we don't believe them. They're garbage. They're trash. So when you have these sort of lies that are constantly told to you in this 2-tiered system, you can't help but be skeptical. For all we know, this gentleman unfortunately did take his own life. I don't know the specifics of it, but you can't help but be skeptical when powerful corporations that are like cutting corners, all of a sudden when someone's going to try to hold them to account, it just so happened at the Zero Hour, that he took his own life.
I don't believe for a second that he killed himself. And the funny thing is, the journalists are just the stupidest people in the world, because they're always like, you must be a conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, if the argument is a guy was blowing the whistle on Boeing and in the middle of blowing the whistle and providing testimony and then was found dead after warning a family friend that he would never kill himself, that's called fishy. And if you lack the cognitive function to ask questions, it must be very difficult for you to put on your shoes.
Did he warn a family friend, or is that him? Did he go on the news and say that? And then
no, it was a family friend. He told.
Okay. No, and your point about journalists is great, because like conspiracy theorists, if you think about whether they're true or not, are almost always the most interesting stories or potential stories. So if you are a journalist and you're talking around like poo-pooing and using the term conspiracy theory as a slander, as a journalist, your job is to basically investigate every conspiracy theory that comes to your desk and determine whether it's true or not. You don't just like throw it out in the trash bin because you're afraid of, being called crazy. That's your job as a journalist, is to find out. And those are always the most interesting ones.
I remember I was in New York hanging at a bar with a bunch of journalists, and it was like 6 months after Osama bin Laden had been killed and then dumped from the helicopter or whatever. And I'm hanging out with these journalists, and they were talking about it. And then I said something like, that whole thing just played out like some stupid action movie. And this one journalist just snapped. He instantly got super angry. And he went from light conversation to, I'm so sick of you conspiracy theories with your insane arguments about we didn't actually get him. And I was like, bro, what?
You said his hypnotism word.
I did not say
Right?
it
That
never
was it.
happened.
Yeah.
I said the story played out like a bad action movie. And he's like, what does that mean? I was like, it means that they did a raid on the compound. He grabbed his wife. Then they captured him, killed him, and then dumped him out of a helicopter. Like the plot of I don't know what you want me to say. I said the thing played out like a bad action movie. I didn't say it didn't happen. But these people are so anti, do not question the official story of the government. They get emotionally charged.
Yeah, it is like that. Although it didn't used to be that way. I think a lot of that came into being with Obama because everyone had like such a huge hard on for him that they just were like, oh, the government must be trustworthy now because our guy is in there. So now the government is trustworthy. And then under the Trump, they freaked out. And then under Biden, they're back to total complicity.
It is wild to me that Obama was the one that they were like, this guy is trustworthy. We should definitely trust everything he says. He doesn't seem like a career politician at all.
Right? It's because he barely was one yet. I mean, he was.
His entire career was about politics so far.
I think it's an interesting question of how did this come about? How did the media become? And for sure that's one. I mean, there's a lot of left-wing people in the media, and then they thought Obama was their savior, so they didn't want to question him as roughly. Another from just being in that world and walking around Capitol Hill and for a brief period Epic Times, which is kind of sort of becoming mainstream conservative media. You realize that one of the most important things to these DC outlets is getting, quote unquote access, where it's you want to get the interview with Mitt Romney.
Yeah, you want them to
then you
hit
can
you
brag
with an
about it. It's bragging rights.
for sure.
And Mitt Romney is not going to give you an exclusive if you've just done a story about Epstein and his client list. So basically, they kind of organically, or they just kind of over time morph themselves into these mouthpieces of the state so that they can get the access to those basically government celebrities and things like that.
Mike Pence.
Some of them might actually be Operation Mockingbird, which was a real thing. There were congressional hearings on it. So some of it actually might be the state using the outlet. But a lot of it is this organic incentive for the outlet to just cave on its principles so it can get a congressman or a senator to come on the interview.
It's actually much, much simpler than that. The people who invest in and run these big companies, they don't go to journalists and say, I want you to report that Joe Biden is of sound mind, or else. They don't go to them and say, I need you to report that Joe Biden is of sound mind, and we're going to write you a check for 10 grand. They go outside and they go, looking for journalists who want to write about Joe Biden being great. You, sir, you want to do it? You're hired. And that's it. That's how they do it.
Or
the journalists they bring in, they put out a form saying, job opening for a journalist. Then they interview 10 people and they sit them down and they say, what do you think about Joe Biden? And one guy goes, well, look, I don't like Trump at all. I wouldn't vote for him, but Biden is not with it. They go, thank you for coming. Next, someone comes in and goes, Joe Biden's so smart. He's the greatest. Can we write about that? You're hired.
Right. So you're correct. I think this is more post hoc, though. This is kind of what has now happened. I was trying to get at the root of it. And I will say at Epic Times, where it's actually kind of the opposite, if they want to hear your opinion on Biden being negative. But what was said in many internal conversations at the Epic Times is specifically certain stories would be shut down because it's we don't want to jeopardize this interview that we just got with such and such senator. Or if you're in the press briefing, we don't want to ask this question that's too aggressive because we want to keep getting called on and we want to keep our relationship with the DOD and things like that. Those conversations absolutely happen.
It's called access journalism.
Right.
Correct.
The irony is...
And it gets my point is it also gets the right-wing outlets.
The irony of all this is when they say the media holds truth to power, the reality is they bury the truth for the powerful. That's what our journalism's become. And when we see sort of people that are trying to be outside the scope of that, they're attacked. You go to the White House press correspondence, when they're always patting each other on the back saying, we're the fourth estate, we're so important. The irony is they're right. That is how important the media is. It's a shame that our legacy media fails in that. They are propagandists and not journalists.
They don't hold truth to power. They hold back truth for power.
Right. That's exactly
They're
what
also
they do.
easily manipulated. If you remember the situation with the intelligence community and the Hunter Biden laptop and the lead up to the 2020 election, you had the Biden camp going out soliciting a former Intel guy and saying, hey, do you think this laptop has the hallmarks of Russian disinformation? And the intelligence guy was like, you know what?
Come to think of it.
It kind of does have the hallmarks of that. And the Biden campaign said, why don't you get more people who think that? They put together this letter. They got the 51 people to sign off on it. They leaked it to Politico. Politico ran with a headline that they still haven't corrected that said the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation. They, changed it around like that. But that didn't take much for the Biden campaign to do that. They just had to reach out to a former Intel guy who liked Biden. And it was easy to manipulate the guy.
You know what I want to do? I think we should literally do this. Maybe Rasmussen would be down. I would like to poll 3,000 people. I want to do something robust. I'll do 10,000 people. I will pay this bill. I want to know who someone voted for, who they're planning on voting for, and then ask a few other questions. How old are you? Where do you work? What's your income? And then the last one is, do you experience inner monologue?
What about Richard Barris from
And
People's
then-
Pundit? He's pretty good.
I think we might need a bigger, maybe, but the general idea is correlation between political party and whether or not someone has an inner monologue.
Be
That's sort of
interesting.
interesting.
Well, what do you mean by that? Like, think.
So
I kind of
there are a
don't
couple
even believe that people don't have an inner monologue.
How could you not
do you get
have
through
an inner
life?
monologue? What does that
right?
mean?
Yeah.
So
this is a fascinating
It's estimated
conversation.
between 50 and 75% of people do not have an inner monologue. There's nothing happening in their brain.
How could there be nothing happening in your
Well, there's something
brain?
called aphantasia.
That would sound kind of nice, to be honest, to experience for a
Sounds
couple
like
hours.
pure hell.
So aphantasia is the inability to visualize in your mind. There's also there's many different ways of thinking. Just because you have an inner monologue doesn't mean you're inherently smart or anyone. That's not necessarily my point. I'm interested in the correlation, but I do think that lacking an inner monologue, the voice in your head, that's the logical pathway. So there are some people who think in abstracts. There are the studies have been done. They ask people like, okay, if you do not experience an inner monologue, what's in your mind? And some people say, I see things. I see it all. When you say the dog jumped over the fence, I don't hear words or a voice or anything. I just see a dog jumping over a fence. It's like, oh, okay, you visualize. Some people hear the words. Some people see the text. It's a visual, spatial thing. Some people have what they describe as like an abstract conceptual understanding that they don't even know how to describe. There's no words. And that they may be very smart. Who knows? I'm interested in the correlation. But I do think my immediate assumption would be certainly someone could be very visual. They could be very... there's also feelings. There's like 4 or 5 principal like thought processes that have been defined. But the inner monologue is quite literally the process of logic. And so lacking that, you may be able to paint the most beautiful picture, build the best engine, it's just intrinsically understanding where parts go, solve math problems, maybe. But if you can't in your mind say, hear the words 2 + 2 = 4, how do you build those logical pathways consistently and coherently? It doesn't mean it's not possible. I just think that the depth of someone without inner monologue will be substantially more shallow than someone with. That is to say, my bias would be, if you have inner monologue, it's probably X times Y, the ability to calculate logic to a certain degree. And if you do not have it, potentially a surface layer thinker. So what that means is, why is it that Democrats tend to not understand, hey, this guy was blowing the whistle and then died? If you're in your mind connecting dots, you can see, here's the probability that this potentially was not a suicide and it is false. But if you do not have the ability to think in your mind words and have these thought patterns, you would just hear man committed suicide. You'd go, but he committed suicide.
Right.
There's another test that I think Lauren Chen tweeted out, and it's the question is, if you did not eat breakfast yesterday, how would you feel? And I don't think it's a good. I understand the point of the question, but I don't think that is a good question because I don't eat breakfast. So my response would be like the same. I don't eat breakfast. What do you mean? But that is the answer to the question. The question is to determine whether or not you can understand conditional hypotheticals. People with very low IQs, they typically respond with, but I did eat breakfast. That's the point.
My buddy Andrew Wilson's been on whatever podcast.
You got to pull your mic closer.
Sorry. My buddy Andrew Wilson's been on whatever podcast, and he asked that question, and rarely did the OnlyFans crowd able to answer that hypothetical.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
What do they say? Stuff like, I did eat breakfast.
That's what they say.
Really?
You can check out their clips
New
of it all.
study.
This is
Can
surface.
OnlyFans girls understand conditional hypotheticals?
But this is the issue. Perhaps I not to sound like a dick, but maybe the culture war really is a divide between surface level low IQ individuals and multi-dimensional thought processes and higher intellectual higher IQ individuals.
I think that's true on a lot of those. I think that's one of the reasons that you see people have really intense emotional reactions to things because they actually don't understand them, so they feel threatened. And
Yeah.
it's not actually a lot, like, if you understand it logically, you don't feel like it's threatening. But if you can't understand it, you're fearful.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about this, but what I do know is that it seems, particularly with Democrats, these appeals to authority that they rely on. Like the entire bifurcation of us that said during lockdowns of COVID, like, what are you doing? This is predictably going to harm children, predictably going to harm the economy. And the other side said, what do you mean you could do your own research? Trust the science. Like that is one of the starkest differences, I think, between the population, those that will accept anything that the establishment tells them. And the irony is, I feel like it was before the most vocal people against like the Iraq war were a lot of left wingers. And I was a Ron Paul guy, so I was against the Iraq war as well. But somehow one of the most impressive amounts of propaganda I've ever seen is that our intelligence agencies in 8 years were able, through Obama and being Mr. War, and then Trump being someone who criticized the intel agencies, we have taken the people that were the most vocal anti-military industrial complex, anti-intel people, and made them their biggest supporters. The people I used to march with against the Iraq war say to me, how have you changed? You've changed so much. I still hate the military industrial complex. Yeah. I still don't trust the CIA. Well, now they trust them implicitly.
So that's generally true. And obviously, I mean, there's that old saying, when you're young and you have no brain, you're a Democrat. And when you grow up, you have no heart and you're a Republican, meaning like obviously more logical thinking lens. It's something along those lines.
If you don't have if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not conservative when you're old, you have no head.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. And it's true. I mean, like typically, Republican as in like conservative, actual conservative policies, I think do have more logic behind their understanding. In your terms of like a appeal to authority, I think it's generally true, but I think there are always examples that go the other way. Like for example, Israel, the biggest the biggest critics of this war are kind of coming from the left. I mean, there are some on the right and the libertarian right, but much of the right, even the MAGA right, is vehemently pro-Israel. Which,
like who?
Like who? What?
Like who would you describe as a prominent personality? Ben Shapiro's
Trump?
The obvious one.
You have Ben Shapiro.
No, for sure. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying like give us an example of like this faction. Ben Shapiro's the obvious one, but he is Jewish. So is there?
I was hanging around at CPAC, and I mean like basically everyone at CPAC was. There is actually a silent majority I found of like MAGA conservatives who are. Sick of Israel and actually big critics of Israel. I mean, a lot of MAGA conservatives are saying like, let's not give money to Israel.
Trump
like
definitely
Schumer.
is.
Right.
But I would say most...
But okay, here's some examples. Matt Schlapp, basically every Republican in Congress, even the ones who I like Thomas Massie and Rand Paul, really aren't coming out and saying like, criticizing the way Israel's prosecuting this war in Gaza. Thomas Massie put up a little meme about Zionism, which was the best relative to the rest of Republican Congress. But
Israel's still under attack.
Israel is still under attack?
Yeah, they're still under attack. They're still being attacked.
By what? Well, the missiles that are coming in,
yeah, there's
they're
missiles
intercepting
and
almost
stuff.
all.
And I think
because they have a good defense system.
You're right. Correct about Trump. Trump has been like, I'm the most pro-Israel, but I think most of MAGA is like, we don't care. We don't want to be involved.
No, I guess I agree with that, but there is a hard section. I mean, there were like, there were Knesset members hanging out at CPAC.
Well, I think like the traditional Republicans have always been very pro-Israel and are diehard. Like I think Lauren Boebert said like something like it is the Holy Land and we stand with Israel.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are some evangelicals who
Right.
feel a religious or cultural obligation to.
But the run-of-the-mill working class MAGA people who are just like, I've not been heard and Trump's speaking for me are like, I don't want to spend money on this.
Yep.
I don't
That's
care.
where I'm at.
Right.
It is not our problem. We could talk till we're blue in the face about this religious war that's gone back forever. I have my opinions. If it was my family that was attacked on October 7th, I'll guarantee I would say we're not going far enough. As an outsider, my plan is quite simple. Like, I could see Israel's done terrible things. I could see that Hamas has done even worse things. But I'm sorry, we have lost the credibility in the people that prosecute these wars in this country and in our intelligence agencies.
Okay, well, Hamas has not killed more than Israel has just killed magnitudes more people than Hamas.
That might be true, but
I don't see how you could say Hamas has done worse things. But
Well, according to Gaza's health ministry.
According to Gaza's health ministry, which has a track record going back the last 3 wars that they've had of having the exact same numbers basically as Israel and the UN. But
I care as much about the morality of Israel-Palestine as I do about Burma and China.
Well, I know.
Exactly.
And that is the position of most MAGA Republicans. The one argument I would make, and I was making this to some congressional staffers last night of the MAGA wing, who their position is, we don't give any money, but we don't want to be involved. I don't really care about the morality of the war. My argument to you, Tim, then would be, you might not care about the war, but Israel's not stopping, and pretty soon Iran or Lebanon might get involved. And when they do, you know for sure that the Pentagon is going to back up Israel, and then you will have just been roped into a war on Israel's behalf that Israel knows we're going to get roped into, and that's why they're so brazen.
I care as much about the morality of Israel-Palestine as I do about China-Taiwan. And you know that when China makes their move finally to launch an incursion into Taiwan, the Pentagon's going to rope you in.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I get it. That's why I'm just anti-war generally.
Yeah, I know, but in that case, wouldn't you want to arrest the slide and say, Jesus, we have to stop funding Israel right now, but say it more with more vigor and
No.
we are on the border of...
Because my attitude is, how about we stop funding all of it?
Right.
I'm not going to moralize Israel and be like, I'm going to say, yeah, why are we spending money anywhere? Why aren't we securing our border? Who was it came on the show? They said Trump would win in a landslide. I think it was Dave Smith. If the libertarians would all vote for Donald Trump, if he came out and said every single one of our troops overseas will be brought here to guard our border, you'd lose a bunch of the open border libertarians, but everybody would be like Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for sure. But Israel is intentionally dragging us into this war, and also Israel has
I think you got Israel derangement syndrome.
Okay, well,
I call it Israel-Palestine derangement syndrome.
Okay, then let me. So first of all, Israel. This is on 2 separate. Do you know the story of Israel wiretapping the White House and blackmailing Bill Clinton?
No.
Okay, well, this is you can see this in the New York Post. There's been 2 independently written books on this.
Yeah, but do you know the story about the NSA wiretapping Angela Merkel?
No, okay, sure. I'm just saying.
Look.
No, I'm giving you examples. If Israel doesn't treat us like an ally, Israel ropes us into these things because they know we're going to back them up.
Germany like an ally, which is the point.
No, I know, but
welcome to international espionage and warfare.
But if you're America first, why would you want to get exploited into this war in the Middle East that you care so little about?
Why are you trying to make me single on Israel when all of these other countries are doing equally or worse things?
Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Yemen.
Because it's not
Egypt,
the money. Hamas doesn't have a lobbying wing in D.C.
Yes, it does.
That captures all your politicians.
I don't want to say her name.
No, but Hamas does not have that. Hamas doesn't have billions of dollars coming in and capturing your politicians.
Omar, the lobbying wing of Hamas.
Yeah, who did say that?
I don't know.
It's true.
It's a funny joke, but it's not true.
I think there's people who have Israel-Palestine derangement syndrome.
The U.S. spends a lot of money on Ukraine, and the U.S. spends a lot of money on Israel.
That Israel has over our politicians, and that it's dragging us into war.
We also spend do you guys know the third country that we spend the most money on? Do you guys know the third country that the country that is third in receiving the most U.S. aid?
Third behind Israel? What is it?
The third behind Ukraine, which is first, then Israel. Ethiopia.
I thought we were talking all the time. We're talking about a current.
I'm talking about right now. Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Yemen, Egypt, Jordan, Nigeria, Somalia.
Americans are like the 100th.
Right. Do you know who actually, which country still has one of the highest payouts from the investments from the U.S. government is? I only learned this recently. Vietnam.
Yeah, well,
we stopped funding it for sure, but it received significantly more money than anything else.
Okay.
So here's what I end up seeing. NATO has substantially more influence over our military policy. If you look at Libya, for instance, airstrikes, the United States' interests in Libya turned into a slaver state, destabilized the country. I mean, if you look at the entirety of North Africa.
NATO, we just use NATO as our justification to go to war. I mean, it's not, we're pulling the strings of NATO. my point is, I would argue Israel is pulling a lot of our strings in terms of foreign policy.
I think you're wrong. I think we're pulling the strings of Israel. That's really what's going on, because Israel is an intelligence and military asset for us in the Middle East. So when we are staging,
but how is it an asset if they've gotten us into all the major
No,
conflicts
those are our
that we've
wars.
been in?
Those are our wars.
Okay.
NATO's not getting us involved in things. We're getting NATO involved in things, and Israel's not. You see my point?
I agree on NATO. I don't agree on Israel. There are some
your
Americans.
position makes no sense.
Okay, there are some, but I mean, like the founding neocons who the PNAC group. Those guys were Americans, but they basically did all that for Israel. So
I think Australia is roping us into this war with China.
Okay,
why are we sending in ships and personnel to Australia?
That's actually a super good
in
point.
2002, Tim.
Did they even send us any kangaroos? What is this?
I know.
You
What the
guys
hell's
know about
going
what's
on?
going on with Australia and China, right?
Yeah, they're having big issues, and that's why we sold Australia a whole bunch of like
weapons
and stuff like that for the.
And there's food issues and dairy issues. It's been wild. It's been going on. So when I went 10 years ago to New Zealand, I started learning about the conflict between Australia and China. New Zealand is partially involved in, and the things China's been doing in this region of the world is massive. I mean, they're building these naval bases and air force bases on the atolls. They're manufacturing islands to establish power. They're sinking Vietnamese vessels. I mean, the threat here is tremendous, and Taiwan is roping us into it. I think the real issue is Taiwan, China. Why are we involved in this? Do you know what's going on with China and Taiwan and how much money we spend and how many personnel we have in Taiwan?
Meanwhile,
I
it's
think the
just a continuation of the
Taiwanese are
Cultural
lobbying
Revolution.
us so that they can get us involved in their regional conflict.
Tim, I agree, and there is some of that, but the reality, like you must know this. I mean, the reality in terms of dollar value, the reality in terms of espionage, leverage, like Jeffrey Epstein, who I would imagine you would agree has a lot of links to Mossad and is likely a Mossad asset.
I'll tell you what I think.
Do you think that?
I think that the obsession with Israel undermines the foreign policy argument that I and many other libertarians have.
It's not an obsession with Israel. I mean, like we just talked about planes for 30 minutes.
Israel is
talking about
number
Israel.
one. Ukraine is.
And in terms of all-time funding, it dwarfs Ukraine.
See, Ukraine lobby. The president is coming here and demanding we pay for his war.
Yes, and so did the president of Israel in 2000.
And guess who's number one?
What right
Ukraine.
now? Right now,
Ukraine
it's
is number
Ukraine.
one.
Right now, it's Ukraine.
So why
there's a lot of pushback
do you worry
against
about
Biden.
number two?
Because it's been. I mean, this is a decades-long thing, and if you go back
obsession.
decades.
But wait, Liam, I have a question for you, right? So if my position is we should stop sending money to all of these people, and you're like, I don't understand what your criticism is. It's like,
No, I agree. I agree with that.
But wait. But you seem to be saying, but it's something more. We have to take Palestine's side. My point is, what you're saying, sort of what we would call non-unique, in that you're saying, but if we don't do that, then the shady people in Washington right now will exploit that situation via Israel and get us into war.
Ukraine is dragging us
correct,
into World War III.
Right.
Vladimir Putin over the Donbass is saying, if the West intervenes directly with troops, we will use nukes. And Macron is saying, I don't care. He's doubling down, saying we will go to war for Ukraine. Ukraine being the largest recipient of U.S. aid, with their president coming to our country and directly lobbying us to pay their bills. And you're going, but Israel.
No, I totally agree on Ukraine. I
don't care about Israel.
Okay, but Ukraine is probably more dangerous because of the nuclear factor. But the difference is, if you go to the Maidan revolution, that was our coup. Ukraine is our. There's probably some, there might be some relations back and forth. There's some blackmail back and forth. But that was our coup that started this civil war that now we're dealing with the consequences.
I am as concerned with Israel-Palestine as I am with Ukraine, Russia, and China-Taiwan.
Even though it could get us dragged into a war with Iran, which might happen very soon.
War with Russia is worse than war with Iran. And
I
Ukraine
agree.
is doing
They're
that.
both. Yeah,
so
they're both
why
terrible.
are you bringing up Israel?
Because as I just said, Ukraine is our client state where we overthrew their government and started a civil war in the Donbass, which led to this conflict today. Israel is the opposite. Israel is a situation where they have a lot of influence over our country, whether it be through blackmail or through fanatical, Zionists who are Americans in our country. But let me give you one anecdote. After 9/11, which we could also analyze some aspects of 9/11. After 9/11, 2002, before we invade Iraq, Netanyahu testifies on the House floor and just brazenly saying, you can pull up the video. In fact, I'll send it to you. He says, there is no doubt Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, and he's schmoozing the congressman. He's like referencing the movie The Great Escape, and he's doing it very charming. And he's blatantly saying he has nuclear facilities hidden underground.
I get it.
And
It's
I
a
need
point.
regime change.
Yeah,
the
kind of
U.S.
like when
needs to enact
Zelensky,
regime
when
change.
Zelensky comes
No,
here.
but the difference.
No. Zelensky right now is doing these things, and you're obsessed with Israel. I regard them the same.
Tim, I was obsessed with Ukraine too last year. I mean, that's what we talked about last time I came on. My
It's
point
the same thing. It's the United
I don't
States
like
government.
getting dragged into unnecessary wars, and I'll
and so
I'll
you brought up
criticize both.
Israel.
Yes, because Israel is about to get us into a war with Iran or Lebanon.
And Ukraine is about to get us into a war with Russia, and Taiwan's about to get us into a war with
Yes,
China.
and I'm worried about all those things. But why
And
can't
so
why
the
can't
position is general anti-war. But what I see is you've got people who have Israel-Palestine derangement syndrome, where no matter what's going on, this, for some reason, trumps literally everything else. Quite literally, when Ukraine is the largest recipient
in terms of the
foreign aid
magnitude
right
of
now,
death,
and we're facing the direct threat from a world leader with nuclear weapons, you're saying, but maybe Iran? And I'm like, Russia literally said he'll nuke us if he has to.
Well, no, I agree. The Russia thing is terrifying.
Let's focus on what
But in
matters,
terms of the
Ukraine.
magnitude of death, Israel-Gaza war far surpassed Russia-Ukraine war, and
I don't care
it seems
about-
like
Is that
if you're paying attention though to the winds of change, it does.
But what does that mean
hold
to
on,
me?
Tim, hold on.
Why are you bringing up a moral point that has nothing to do with this country?
No, Tim. I'm saying the point.
You're obsessed.
I was about to get to the point of the country, which is that you can kind of see the national security state shifting its attention to Israel.
How many
as well.
children have died in Yemen?
It looks like we're moving focus away from Ukraine, thankfully, but sadly, it's to support
How
another
many
war.
children have died in Yemen?
I think like over 500,000, and that's another.
Do you not know the reporting, the actual number?
No, I believe it's over 500,000. Is it not?
So define those deaths. Explain,
Some of those might be from hunger, but that's for the Saudi Arabia's war
so
in
it's
Yemen.
like 120K.
Oh, okay. Well, I heard over 500,000. That might have been from starvation and things like that. You're talking about Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen.
Right, with U.S. support and weapons.
Correct. Also, a horrible thing, which the Saudis actually finally backed off of, and now we're again bombing Yemen because of the Houthis thing, because of Israel again. So we finally ended that war, and now it's started again because of Israel's war.
Wait. We were involved in helping Saudi Arabia. We were launching airstrikes and commando raids in Yemen
Basically genocide.
well before October 7th.
I know.
And then when the Houthis, who we've been in conflict with the whole time, start attacking us again, and we attack them, you're like, but now it's Israel's fault.
No. The Saudis had briefly paused their war in Yemen.
Yes, the conflict between us and the Houthi rebels and the Iranian militias and all that stuff has been going on well before October 7th.
No, I know, but before October 7th,
But you're saying now
they
Israel's
paused.
done it.
Saudi and Yemen's had a peace deal. They had a ceasefire. My point is, it reignited. Now we are the ones bombing Yemen directly.
Maybe it's Iran
Whereas before
supplying
it was
weapons
Saudi.
to Gaza, which resulted in the October 7th attacks, which triggered the war, and it's their fault.
I just don't. I don't.
Yeah, but that's just pure speculation. And
if October 7th didn't happen, we would not be here. So you're saying it's Israel's fault. I'm like, but Israel got attacked and retaliated. You can argue the retaliation is over the top, but they didn't start the war.
Okay, but we
What's
both agree we
interesting
shouldn't
is-
be involved. But if you want to go and assess the entire Israel-Palestine conflict, I mean, you go back to like pre-1940s, and it's obvious like who the aggressor was in that situation, who
cares?
took the land.
Well, you know,
because
Hamas
you're blaming
didn't start planning
Iran
this
for
until
October 7th.
Biden
and saying,
came into office.
No. I'm attacking your position where
Why?
I believe you're obsessed with Israel for some reason.
It's just one of many conversation topics.
Tell me about Burma.
I don't know about Burma.
Why not?
Because are we involved in Burma? Is there a potential nuclear escalation path with the conflict in Burma? I only care if my country's
tell me
getting
about
involved,
Kashmir.
and especially if my country is backing the side.
Tell me about Kashmir.
That's
This is all I don't get. This is what confused me about this. If I'm on your side of this, and let's say I'm guessing you think morally Palestine is more justified than Israel, that's fine. Tim and I are basically saying we don't care. There's bad shit that occurs all throughout the world. We should not be involved. And you somehow seem to be saying...
before the show started, you were all on board.
No.
You should help me out because you had a lot.
But listen,
you had some good facts.
Right, but this is what I'm saying, right? Like, I'm on your side in that, and I even told you this. I said, you should be happy with me because my position is, as some redneck that's concerned about what's happening in my neck of the woods, I don't give a shit to go through a 2,000-year history of religions fighting. All I'm saying is don't get involved. I don't understand.
That's why I was trying to make the case of that the Israeli government is dragging us into war. Tim is correct. The Ukrainian government is also dragging us into war. So is the Taiwanese. Israel has by far the most robust lobbying apparatus, and as we know from the whole Epstein saga, in addition to lobbying, they have this espionage apparatus that blackmails our politicians and forces us into war. So my point is, I don't like any of these countries that are dragging us into war.
Right.
And especially Israel's, which is far more powerful and has far more influence.
So my view is...
That's proven from basically all our Middle East interventions, which are all centered around protecting Israel.
I think this is a bias and obsession. I think that if you analyze what's going on with Israel, one could equally make the argument that the U.S. manipulates Israel as a puppet state in the Middle East for control, military weapons development, computer chips particularly, so that when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East, we have a massive base of operations. The U.S., and I think the evidence for this is the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. We can pull up the map here. For people who don't know geography, and I'm not trying to be mean, people don't realize that we decide, hey, we got to invade Iraq, and we got to invade Afghanistan, and we got to build a bunch of military bases here. And what is in the middle of these two countries? Iran. It has been explicitly stated for a long time that our goal is to go after Iran. And we have an ally in the region. They scream it to the high heavens. Israel's our ally in the region. It's our ally in the region. It is a weapons manufacturer. It's one of the best in security and weapons technology. And we utilize this as a staging base of operations. Then people come out like you and say, but Israel's controlling us. And I'm like, dude, the U.S. military-industrial complex is not just the United States. It's also NATO. The massive empire that is the military-industrial complex is not a puppet of Israel.
No, Tim, like you missed part of my point, which is that there are guys like PNAC. There are these hardcore American Zionists who push it. We push it intentionally, and I'm sure there's some back and forth where we have like leverage on them and pull the strings. But to deny Israel's influence over U.S. politics compared to Ukraine's influence or Taiwan's influence, I think is a bit silly. I mean,
so the point I'm making is it is an assumption that people in the U.S. are like, oh no, Israel's telling us what to do, and not we agree with them. We want our military presence there.
There's some of that, but do you agree that Epstein was likely a Mossad asset?
I mean, I have no idea.
But
okay,
I agree.
well, you should look into that because he was blackmailing. He was blackmailing
That's right.
politicians for the benefit of Israel. He worked for Leslie Wexner, Leslie Wexner is openly
certainly
a massive Zionist, very powerful.
But what I'm saying is it is bias to say Israel controls us instead of we are aligned with Israel.
I said both. That's why I brought up PNAC. There are people in the U.S. government who are very powerful. They were much more powerful during the Bush administration, but they were
I see no
voluntarily
distinction between NATO and Israel.
And let me just...
but NATO clearly is just a U.S. arm that
clearly
can start
define that how
they can start unconstitutional, because we always use it to start unconstitutional wars like in Iraq and stuff. And NATO, I mean, we're obviously the biggest country in NATO.
I don't disagree with you. I
Poland,
think AIPAC is lobbying undue influence. I agree with all that. The only thing that the attention I'm getting, you tell me if I'm reading this situation wrong. Let's say Tim and I get our way and we're like, we stop sending money to all these places. Heck, I'd pull out of NATO. I'd want NATO disbanded. Let's say that happens. And I just say, I don't care. Israel, Palestine, both. We could sit two people here and argue till they're blue in the face.
I'm also for getting out of NATO. So.
Okay, but here's my question to you. Are you saying beyond stop sending money to all these places, you would also want the U.S. to proactively work against Israel for the abuses you think they're committing in Palestine?
No, of course. Well, what I would first of all, I agree with all of you that I would take all foreign aid off the table. But I mean, as the U.S., as like the big superpower, I would negotiate a ceasefire or work out some deal for a lasting peace. I mean, and Trump tried to do that. And there's a great clip of Trump after he was out of office. He's being interviewed for his book, and he's talking about meeting Netanyahu and Abbas, the head of the PLO in the West Bank. And he says very candidly, he says, I got a really good feeling about Abbas. He was kind of like a father figure, and I really got the sense he wanted to work out a deal. Within 5 minutes of talking to Netanyahu, I realized he had no intention of ever making a deal. So Trump just very candidly kind of said, who's really the ones who don't want to make a peace deal? And we pay the price for this, both economically and with our, and potentially
the U.S.
militarily.
has wanted to control the Middle East for a very, very long time.
I agree, but I'm saying Trump actually tried to make peace, and the one he said was the problem was Netanyahu.
I get it.
So he asked me what my position would be, and it would be to sue for peace and don't send money to anyone.
The point I'm making is one could equally argue that Netanyahu defying Trump, much like the deep state defied Trump. And Netanyahu aligned with establishment forces in this country. So
you oppose the deep state.
When people come out and they go, it's Israel making us do these things, I'm like, no, Israel's a puppet state of the United States.
I think you're kind of. I mean, I agree with you. I think it goes both ways, but I think you're very under.
I don't think
appreciating.
But I disagree with that.
Israel's
in that
influence.
It goes both ways. In that, what I actually think is there is no both ways. It's one entity.
No, I
The
think
military industrial complex.
I mean, obviously, even within the military industrial complex, there's people who agree and disagree. So there's
Sure. But what I'm saying is NATO, Israel, the U.S., Australia, the Five Eyes Spy Club, there's no one way about it or the other. There's no, they're controlling us, no, we're controlling them. It's they're two brothers sitting there smoking joints together in total agreement on everything. And to argue that one brother made the other brother smoke pot is ridiculous. They're sharing the joint they bought together.
Well, I mean, but okay, you're kind of just asserting this, but even, if that's the case, there are, and you just acknowledge there are disagreements, but,
I'm just asserting this is a funny thing for you to say when you're I'm literally arguing that's what you're doing.
But you're asserting. I'm trying to give you some.
You're
some points
saying
here,
they are lobbying us and controlling us. And
it's all kumbaya when it gets up there. I think there's different.
No,
factions.
and I'm saying
there's like Bush.
There's
the Bushes who are very Zionist. There's Biden who is clearly Zionist.
I'm done. You guys are obsessed with this stuff.
I'm not
you have an
obsessed with
affliction.
Israel. What are you talking about?
You have an Israel affliction.
Because there's a massive war that I'm paying for, and that we might get involved in a bigger war.
And there's so much more stuff going on in the world you can't tell me about because you are so obsessed. I can't take Israel, Palestine.
I am a foreign policy guy, but I don't.
Okay, tell me about the history of China and Taiwan. Let's start talking about that. How many people are at risk? How many people live on the island? How many troops are there? How much have we spent so far?
Okay, I know more about Ukraine, but I think in Taiwan, I think we have like 120 troops stationed there.
120.
That's the last time I checked. Have we increased? Is it over 200 now? It might be over 200. And it's a bad thing. We should not have U.S. troops there as a trigger point to go to World War III with a direct nuclear power. That one says only 30 troops. Okay, well, maybe they swap them out. But I know at one point they put in like a surge of 100.
What lobbying groups exist for Taiwan?
Well, there are think tanks that are super hawkish against China. Well,
like who?
Well, like the CSIS and like the Council on Foreign Relations. These guys are kind of just inherently.
Oh, come on, those are generic terms. Everybody knows those guys.
No, I know.
Like we know APAC. Everyone can bring up APAC. What's Taiwan's?
I actually don't know the name of Taiwan's, but I would say there are groups like that, and there are groups like the Epoch Times, where I used to work, which is, claims to be a media outlet, but it is basically not a Taiwan lobbying group, but it's an anti-CCP lobbying group. So I don't exactly know what the point of your line of questioning is.
My point is, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You live in Israel world. I think there's tons of other military conflicts in the world that are deeply pressing.
And last year, all I could talk about was Ukraine. This one's a little more pressing now. I'm not like, I just don't really understand your point. You keep just saying like you're obsessed. We should stop talking about it. But
yeah. Israel today,
but
right
you're
now,
obsessed
is
with
not,
America. So don't you not want U.S.
I live in America.
Yeah, and don't you want the U.S. not to be dragged into another
which is why my
unnecessary war in
position
the Middle
is,
East?
if we could stop the hyper focus and obsession on one tiny ass country and focus on the full scale problem,
the people
that
who
is
you're
the
bashing the people who you're bashing as obsessed with Israel are the only ones right now pushing back.
You've already made a bunch of moral arguments over the deaths in Gaza
because it is a moral atrocity. I don't really
obsession.
No, but what?
How many children have died in Ukraine?
Fewer than in Gaza. But
how many?
I don't know a number of children, but
you don't even know the number of the most pressing conflict right now.
Fewer children have died in Ukraine than in Gaza.
How many?
I don't know. I could look it up. I would have known it
How many in Gaza?
A couple months ago when I was more focused.
How many in Gaza?
In Gaza, okay, it's like 30K are the official numbers. It's probably higher than that.
Official from who?
From that Gaza Health Ministry, which yes is run by Hamas, but they do have a track record of being in line with Israel's numbers.
Now, considering we spend
the children something like 12,000.
Now, considering we spend substantially more money right now on Ukraine, and we're being directly threatened by probably the most powerful nuclear nation on the planet, I'd like to know how many children have died in Ukraine. Why don't you know the answer? Have you asked yourself that?
I used to know. Well, I don't know if I ever bifurcated between children and adults, but I used to know. Yes, the Ukraine civilian death count, which is I think it's below 10,000. I could be wrong on that, but
I think it's about 11,400.
Okay.
Good. I don't care one way or the other.
I know, but
I don't know why it is that you have made a moral argument to me over the atrocities of Gaza and you don't know about Ukraine.
Because
to me, that signifies
Tim,
you don't actually care about international conflict.
Yes, I do, Tim.
No, you're obsessed with Israel.
But the people making the moral arguments, if you want to get something, if you want to, convince a politician to stop supporting a certain policy, sometimes you have to make the moral argument, which is like, That's what the left is doing right now. And I'm not a leftist, but I do actually appreciate that the left is out there protesting because it's putting pressure on Biden. Every time Blinken walks out of his house, Code Pink and all those, left-wing feminist protesters are pouring red paint on his sidewalk and they're screaming at him. And that's adding pressure.
No, I disagree. If I
UNICEF says 545 children have been killed.
That's
and
that's
that
not
about
correct.
in Ukraine.
No, but
That's children.
That's unit. That's,
I'm just saying,
something's wrong with
if
that.
you wanted a number,
Tim, you said
That number's not
11,000
correct.
civilians. I thought you were talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's why.
but I asked children in Gaza.
But listen,
That's not Gaza. That's Ukraine.
no, that's Ukraine.
I know. I'm asking how many
How many children in Gaza? I think it's about 12,000 or more.
because you made a moral argument to me about the atrocities of Gaza, and when I ask you about the atrocities of Ukraine, you don't know.
No, Tim, you put me on the spot and like, what's the exact number? Yeah, dude, I tracked Ukraine very closely. I can tell you all about the Maidan coup.
Now calm down. Here's the point. Here's the point.
Okay.
The most pressing conflict on earth right now is Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron. Now let me finish. Emmanuel Macron just came out, doubled down again, following the third or fourth threat of nuclear force against NATO. And Macron said, "We don't care. We will not lose." And he has called for, in the event we need to, NATO troops deployed into Ukraine. Putin again responded, "We are ready and willing to use nukes against you." Look. The most money we're spending. Zelensky is coming directly to our country. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on this war. It is the most pressing thing. And you're going, but the children of Gaza, the moral atrocities.
Well, because Israel has a potential path to escalation as well. I mean, like,
okay, now here's my point.
Iran
my
might
point
have some nuclear capabilities, like a dirty bomb or something. Things could get very ugly with Iran too.
And maybe, what if, maybe Iran might get involved.
What if, dude? I mean, if this keeps going, you know that if they get it.
Now here's the point. Vladimir Putin, the president, and despot. How about I finish?
I agree with you.
So the leader of a nation which has more nuclear weapons than anybody else has threatened to use them against us. But why have you not asked yourself why it is you know more about Israel when Iran has not directly, doesn't even have a nuke?
No, if you actually quizzed me on it, I probably know more about Ukraine. Like I was saying, the last 2 years, I have been all focused on Ukraine. It's literally one of the reasons that motivated me into journalism. And then Epic Times hired me. And then I would go to the State Department and the Pentagon and ask every single day. I was the only journalist in the Pentagon and State Department criticizing the Ukraine war. You get not many people follow me, but you can ask them. It was all, I was obsessed with Ukraine. I had Ukraine obsession syndrome.
If I can.
Last year, man, I did.
If I could get in here real quick.
And this one seems more pressing because it seems hotter. And also the national security state seems to be pivoting to this one.
It's not.
You don't think?
Listen, can I get in for a second? Let me say this.
Ukraine is having trouble for the first time getting funding because the focus is on Israel.
Listen, I think the fundamental problem is,
Ukraine is hopefully winding down because of the Israel war.
1 second, please. I think the problem is you are overselling this. You are talking past the sale. And I can tell you exactly when you've done it. You know from the conversation we had before this, we're literally like, yeah, we hear you on Israel. We shouldn't be sending money to them, right? But you keep going. And here's where you make a mistake, right? You're like, well, it's like these Code Pink people and they're doing a lot. No, that's the exact opposite. Average people that are sick and tired of financing these foreign wars buy that argument. When you say, and these people that you see blocking roads and cutting paintings and acting like spoiled brats, they're helping the cause. They're not. Well, take the win when you got it. We're saying don't send the money to Israel. That's what we're saying.
Okay. I'll calm down. I actually agree with the first point you made that I'm overselling it to you guys, and it's actually probably making you more annoyed with my case.
What I said in the very beginning.
Well, but if I could just add to the Code Pink people, I disagree when you come to the Code Pink people. Sure, if you're blocking a road and you're pissing off guys driving in traffic, what are you really helping? But if you're going outside Blinken's house, which they are doing, that does add pressure to Blinken, and they do see that they're losing the progressive left, like in states like Michigan where there's a huge Muslim population. Those things I think actually do add pressure. I agree with you. Since we already agree, I probably didn't need to, which was your point about me making the moral case for no reason. That could have an effect. I mean, I think a lot of people argue it better than me. I'm not much of a public speaker, to be completely honest. So I hear you. I mean, I'm working on it, but anyway, sorry.
This is the conversation we've had with Ian a lot, because the first thing I try to do whenever someone comes up to me and talks to me about Israel is I immediately just say, how many people have died in Ukraine? And they can't answer. And I say, how many people what's the current amount of dead in Burma? I don't know. Okay, well, let's talk about Sudan. Well, I don't know about Sudan, but the United States has been funding the conflict in Sudan. Well, let's talk about Somalia. I don't know. Okay, now ask yourself the simple question: why don't you know? And I'm not telling you you're not allowed, like, you're absolutely allowed to focus on Israel. When Ben Shapiro comes out and says Israel this, Israel that, I'm like, well, he's an Orthodox Jewish man. I absolutely understand why he's deeply concerned about literally the only state, that the only Jewish state on the planet. I can understand his sentiment. As for an American who's talking about foreign policy, I have to ask you why it is. There's a video of a woman. She goes up to the camera screaming. She's like, why don't you care about Gaza? It's like she's got some kind of derangement over this. And the issue is,
but in terms of magnitude of death, it is the highest of those of those examples you just mentioned. I'm just saying, but some people
more children have died in Yemen because of the U.S. funded Saudi conflict.
And I did know about the Yemen war
before.
Before. And part of the Yemen thing is just that, like, the media for whatever reason didn't cover it. So that's you're right. That's why. But in terms of those conflicts you just mentioned, besides Yemen, which ended at least Saudi Arabia's persecution of it, you might not care, but there are people who do care about innocent life, and it's the greatest magnitude, and therefore it's the greatest urgency to be upset about.
I think I understand what you're saying, that there might be people that need convinced in other ways. For me, this is the simplest argument. When we take these moral stances, these are the sort of things that our intelligence agencies end up doing. We're in a military alliance of NATO, right? And in that alliance, we are honor bound and treaty bound to defend any NATO country, correct? So we've stationed nuclear weapons in the country of Turkey. Meanwhile, we're in Syria bombing Assad, and we're told that we can't leave Syria, to the point where the generals committed treason, as far as I'm concerned, and lied to Donald Trump when he tried to pull out. Because the argument is, if we leave Syria, our ally, the Kurds, will have genocide committed on them by our ally, the Turks, who we've given nuclear weapons. Now, how does that apply to what we're saying? I don't care about who's right or wrong in these conflicts. You might be 100% right. And I do have sympathy that I think Israel's gone too far. I also think Hamas sucks. We talked about it. They could be trying to target the leadership of Hamas. Instead, they seem to be more interested in bombing. But the point is, I'm so sorry. I've lost my compassion for having to pretend to care about this stuff. It's not that I don't have a big heart. I do. It's that I know that that's used to take advantage of me and other Americans to get us involved in these quagmires. And so the stance I've taken, until we could trust
that's
the people
point, though.
Well, I understand, but
the side that's dragging us into the quagmire is Israel. It's not Hamas. There's no Hamas lobbying sector. No one's saying we should start sending weapons to Hamas.
But it doesn't matter who's dragging us in, to me. And I understand you might, to you and to
Why
other
does it
people.
matter? You have to know who to oppose, because it depends on who's dragging you in.
It doesn't matter to me, because my answer is stop giving them all money. And you could be like, yeah, but Israel's really bad. Right. We're not giving them money anymore.
So I agree, and I think different arguments work on different people. A fiscal argument might work more for certain conservatives, but a moral argument might work more for someone in the Biden administration. So I don't see why you can't attack it on both sides.
So how many people died in Sudan in the last year?
I don't know. And
how much money
got me on this one.
How much has the U.S. government given to the government of Sudan in this pre this conflict and now moving into 2024?
I don't know. I don't see an escalation path for nuclear war in Sudan, so it doesn't shock me that much.
And so here's
I agree. Like, you got me there, man. But I also don't support sending money to the Sudanese government, and I don't support the war there.
$850 million obligated in 2022 to Sudan. The war in Sudan, the current war in Sudan, is 2023 to the present, though there is ongoing Sudanese conflict that we've been involved in, and the dead, up to 13 to 15,000, with 33,000 additional injured. And I don't know why we gave them near $1 billion. And in 2023, we don't have the final numbers from foreignassistance.gov, but Sudan, I believe it's at 400 million. Let me see if this thing loads. $642 million amidst this civil war. Why is the U.S. involved? It must be the Sudanese lobby coming to the United States and insisting that we give them money, isn't it?
Tim, I like, it's not that I'm like, hypothesizing that there is an Israeli lobby. There is one, and it's AIPAC, and it has billions of dollars that it funds to all these, different politicians, and you won't have a hard time getting people like Ron Johnson or Rand Paul or Thomas Massie to criticize the war in Sudan. You will actually get the hard time, even with those guys who have high integrity, in my opinion, to come out vehemently and criticize the Israeli government. But also, it's fewer deaths and it's less money. So you have your answer right there. There's a reason Israel's more pressing, and it's because we're sending them more money and more innocent people are dying.
I mean, for me, it just feels like we have such a problem with corruption and getting involved in these wars in this country. It seems like this entire 30-minute conversation is sort of irrelevant in that we should be focusing on the agreement that we're all agreeing to stop sending them money. And what happens is when we get drug into but Israel's more immoral, I could easily push back and say, but here's certain things. And then we get involved in this, what I see as an unnecessary conversation for the people that we're trying to reach at this moment. Granted, if we're sitting at the table with a bunch of lefties, or we're sitting at the table with a bunch of like evangelicals that think we need to defend Israel because, the resurrection's coming, then yes, your argument
there's people who do.
Yeah, your argument changes when it comes to land. But I think that we're spending a lot of time disagreeing on something that we're basically all agreeing on 95% of what we're talking about.
The frustrating thing to me is that there are people who live in this world where Israel is the cause of literally everything.
That's true.
And, I've talked about during Occupy Wall Street that story I tell quite a bit where the guy stands up and yells, "What's wrong with you people? It is fracking."
Right. I've heard that story.
Fracking.
And just to be clear, that is not me. I am not one of these people that thinks like Israel, and especially like the people who are literally anti-Semitic and they think the Jews are doing it. I am not one of these people that think the Jews get us into every conflict.
Yeah, you said that before the show. You were talking about this.
Yeah, and those people are stupid and wrong because you create a barrier for Jewish people who might be critics of Israel to come on board and join your cause. So I just want to be clear, I'm not one of those people.
We're gonna go.
Tim, sorry.
We're going to go to Super Chats. We're going to read the Super Chats from the audience. So get your Super Chats in now because I guarantee you disagree with at least someone here so far because no one's going to agree with everything. Smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. It is such an amazing night out. The weather was so awesome.
It was a beautiful day.
Yeah, amazing. It was 80 degrees yesterday out here in good old West Virginia.
It's spring for sure. I'm really excited about it.
Spring comes really a
our
lot
cherry
sooner.
tree has begun to flower.
Gorgeous.
So cherry blossoms, it's beautiful. But become a member at timcast.com and buy Cast Brew coffee at castbrew.com. Let's read your Super Chats. Clint Torres says, "Howdy, people." Right on. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, "Tim, today's culture war was good. Never heard the guys, but I liked their words. Rob nailed it. Why people love Trump. First person to acknowledge rural folk even exist and are important to our nation." I'm not surprised. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. is a PA guy like you.
Awesome.
So he's biased is what you're saying. This isn't even real. He's just into Pennsylvania. You guys all have this club.
I'll take it, yeah.
Kalishnikov says, "Tim, please look into the story of the 8th graders in Connecticut being criminally charged over edgy speech. Truly despicable." Have you guys seen that story?
I haven't seen it. I'm going to check it out.
Frey Kane says, "Took fluoxetine." Is that it? As a kid, gave me some severe side effects, suicidal thoughts, and extreme antisocial behavior.
That's what, that was
Misdiagnosed with bipolar and stopped after 10 years. Wow. Brandon Norton says, "I hope you guys are going to talk about the guy from Boeing who unalived himself and after was on his way back for a 3rd day." Yep. Kendall Bird says, "Sorry for the loss of Mr. Bocus. Is there a plan for the successor to the mascot of Timcast?" Well, my idea was that we get another cat and we name him Snowball too.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and because, do you guys understand that reference?
Simpsons.
You
That's
mean from
right.
The Simpsons, yeah.
So we've never had a Snowball 1, and I was like, we can't name another cat Bocus, so we'll get a cat called Snowball 2 as the joke, which is also a Simpsons reference.
I think it's cute.
Snowball 2. And it seems like most people are now asking for another cat because everyone loved Mr. Bocus. The funny thing is, he destroyed everything and he pissed literally everywhere. He hated using a litter box. And it's like how he just had so much love. It's just, I'm pretty sure we're going to find piss from him somewhere and go, how did he get in here?
I was a fan. He was an honorable cat, a true statesman, if you will. But he had some flaws, I will say.
That's
and
right.
it was really unpleasant to walk up to your desk and realize that he had peed either on it or near it. Or I think he got trapped in Carter Ranks' studio one
and he
time.
pooped everywhere.
And he pooped everywhere. Like, look, he was an extreme terrorist in some circumstances.
And we don't know how he got in Carter's studio.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And also, praise be to Bocus, but they were cons. There were some rough times.
Before he was sick, he found a way to get into the walls.
Yeah, he did all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, he was a crafty fella.
I like when he would come onto the show and like prevent me from camera switching because his tails just hit me in the face.
I'm pretty
Love
sure
you,
that
Bocus.
in the walls he's probably pissed. And we'll never find it. No one ever will. And it'll be like 40 years later, someone will be like remodeling and they'll go, what the? It's like a stain. And I'm pretty sure within the next few weeks or months, we are going to go into like an unused closet or something and just realize there's, piss somewhere. And that's what he did. Seamus, the new cat, Seamus 1, not Seamus 2, that ingrate. Seamus 1 does not.
The cat is called Seamus 1.
Yes. So Seamus 1 is a good dude, and he's our new cat. He was living in our garage. He was less than a year old when we found him. Libby really is loving this.
That's just so funny.
Well, yeah, Seamus 2 is the cartoonist.
Seamus 2's gonna hate tweet at you after this.
Right. Sorry, Seamus, that's just really.
You mean
Well,
Seamus 2? Or you apologize to the cat? I'm now confused.
Well, the issue is Seamus 2 was never here.
Right, yeah.
So we're not going to call him Seamus 2.
How could he be Seamus 1 if he's never around?
Yeah, exactly. The cat is Seamus 1. He's a good dude. He doesn't pee everywhere, and
Which one? I'm now confused
Seamus 1.
again. Oh yeah, Seamus 2.
It was funny because we were hanging out, and I mentioned passively, like we had a guest over, or like they were getting ready for the show, and I was like, "Oh, we got to bring in Seamus to get his balls chopped off." And then the guest started laughing, and then I was just like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Really, Seamus?" And I was like, "Yeah, we have him sleeping in the garage, but he's got to go get his balls chopped off before he can come in the house." And then he laughed, and I was like, "I'm not joking." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm talking about the cat." So we have removed his ability to reproduce. I'm pretty sure Seamus 1 has siblings all over the area, though. So he was living in our garage. And then we trapped him, caged him, Stockholm syndromed him, and then removed his testicles. And now he is a house cat who very much enjoys his new existence, though it is the end of his bloodline. But in the middle of the night, you can hear a female cat in heat screaming. And I'm like, the mama cat didn't have one baby. She probably had a bunch of babies, and then they grew up and they're all over somewhere.
Yeah, the female cat screaming in heat is really, that'll keep you up nights.
They scream.
It sounds like a person, too. I mean, it freaks you out. Someone's being murdered. Also, the way... Never mind.
Are you still thinking about which Seamus are you thinking about? One or two?
No, it was.
All right,
It was be-testicled cats.
Yes, the spritzing.
Yeah.
Here we go. Juan Castle says, first, any tips, fellas, for working in high-stress work? What is, it depends on the work, I guess. Stress ball. You just squeeze, you get angry. You know, I got to be honest, people always said, drums are so great because you get all your stress out. And I was like, I have never felt relief from physically striking something. Punching a pillow or squeezing a ball, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't know.
For me, my advice on work is as follows. Either get a job that you hate and pays you tons of money so you can live the exact life you want when you're not at work, or get a job that you love that makes enough so you can eat. So if you're in a high-stress job and it's not paying you enough,
Why are those the only options?
well, what are you going to do?
Look, Libby, you're not a
here's the
man.
deal.
You don't understand.
It's not easy to get a job that you hate that pays you a lot, because to get a job that pays you a lot, you have to do well at it. And to do well at something, you have to like it at least a little.
Yeah, it's true. But I think a lot of people get stuck in jobs that they hate and it doesn't pay much. And
Yeah, but probably it doesn't pay much because you're working a job you hate. Like, how are you ever going to advance if you're just like, God damn, I got to get out of here?
Yeah, I think if you want to de-stress, to Libby's point, you do have to advance. So if you are in a job that you hate and it pays poorly, what I would do, and it's not going to be an immediate fix, but get a side hustle, but not like a stupid, like that. I don't know, that phrase sounds stupid, but I mean, I didn't have a journalism background, but I kind of DM'd my way and worked my way into journalism by writing op-eds and things. Do something like that where you're building something you are passionate about, and results will ease that stress for you when you actually get another job with something you like or something like that. But hone your skills, become smarter, and that's really probably the only way to get out of it.
The cryogenic drummer says, try a workout, Tim. I've recently hired a personal trainer, and we're also doing work personal training sessions once a week. And because I skate all the time, so I got great legs, but I have zero upper body. And so I was like, I've literally never done it. And, I was talking to the most trusted health professional in media, Joe Rogan, of course. And he told me I had to lift. He's like, you got to start lifting, bro. I was like, that you got to do it. Keeps you young and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay. So now I'm doing lifting and stuff. And that makes you feel so good. It's indescribable. I think the thing that never really got me when people were saying stuff like do exercise and lift is they always just be like, oh yeah, it's so good for you. I'm like, it makes you feel euphoric. Mm-hmm. Like for like the hour or two after, you're floating. It's remarkable. And then the next day you wake up just feeling really good.
Well, in the words of Elle Woods, exercise gives you endorphins, and endorphins make you happy. And happy people don't kill their husbands. So
that's true.
That's great.
That's right. Let's go. Richard Cranium says, Tim, can I get a shout out for my son Clayton? Almost shared your birthday, born March 8th. Wow, at 2:14. Your talks on creating culture and shade trees made me realize children are how we make lasting change. That is correct. And then I always recommend, do not underestimate your children. Children are not stupid. They have just not been programmed. So when you buy a brand new computer and it's got, 10 terabytes or however many terabytes you put in it, the computer is no less good of a computer because you've never installed video games on it. You guys got to do the work to install all the programs in the video games. So the mistake a lot of people, parents I see make is, I remember I was asking someone about their kid and if they're teaching him math or anything. He's not ready for that. He's not smart enough. And I was like, he won't be smart enough if you don't start teaching him.
He's definitely not now.
Here's what happens. People always have this incorrect statement. The incorrect statement that it is easier for children to learn language. That's just ridiculously not true. They're like, oh, it's easier for kids to learn how to speak a language. And I'm like, the child is surrounded by people speaking and it takes them a couple of years to learn to speak and they're still not articulate. Mm-hmm. A human being, an adult human can become fluent in if you have a European-based language, Romance or Germanic, it takes an estimate, I believe it's 44 weeks of training to become fluent, conversational in everything. And if you are European and trying to learn an Asian language, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Thai, etc., it takes up to 80 or 90 weeks. It's more difficult because it's a different language structure. But think about that. In less than 1 year, an adult human can become totally fluent in another language. So if you speak English, you want to learn Russian, if you are doing standard lessons, it takes you less than a year to do. A baby's, how long does it take a human to become fluent in a language? Certainly a 7-year-old child can talk to you, but are they going to be able to articulate their thoughts about the intricacies of the politics in Liechtenstein or something like that? Now, I'm not saying they have to know about the politics, but those words themselves. So people are always like, kids learn language easier. No, adults can learn language easier because they've been programmed, like we've developed those minds. My ultimate point, get your kid on a skateboard, give your kid a baseball, give your kid a football, any kind of sport, and get them doing physical activity, mental activity, music, reading, all of it. And many parents will find, but my kid doesn't understand it. Well, of course they don't. They've never touched it before. So I think the first time I was ever shown a chess set, I was 3 years old. I guarantee you 3-year-old Tim had no idea what was going on. I was probably banging on the board and flipping pieces over. But you just keep saying it. This is the pawn. This is what it does. This is the rook. This is what it does. And then you build those neural pathways. So by the time the kid is old enough, they're really good. This is why, ask yourself, the professional baseball players, how old were they when they started playing baseball?
Super young. 2
or 3. And were they really even playing baseball? No. But, they were being exposed to it. So there you go. All right. Christopher Back says, the only solution is term limits. Either commit to it or vote them out, all of them. Yeah, I wish it were that easy, but there are challenges. I think check out the Culture War episode we did with the former congressional staffers to understand the issue of term limits, because Congress is non-existent. There's no Congress. It's just pay to play.
I ran for Congress, and it was a special election in 2019. There was one county that split in half in Pennsylvania, so half of our election was, and the other half that I wasn't running for, a man by the name of Glenn Thompson, he's the longest-serving Republican in Pennsylvania. When you went to that county, it was the only county that they told you, don't talk about term limits, because they love Glenn, and he would be out. Every other county, they wanted to hear term limits.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me because as some just, novice rube, I'm just saying off the cuff what I really believe. And everyone else is thinking.
Your first mistake.
Right.
Never say what you believe.
Whoopsie. Everyone else knew. Don't talk about term limits here.
J. Joan Clark says, Whitney Webb tells all. Tim should really have her on with Dr. Stephen Greer, at least Culture War. Agreed. Sounds good. All right. Cornelius says, if McAfee isn't going to dismiss the charges, the best thing he could do for Trump is leave Fani on the case instead of allowing a different, possibly more competent DA to take over the case.
But it would delay. That's why they're not doing it, because they want to get it in as soon as possible. They don't care if they win or not. They just want to delay and interfere with the election.
Max Reddick says, I remember Rob had a conversation with Destiny about Biden's business dealings. He laid out the argument pretty well, but Destiny didn't buy it. See, that's the issue with the left and the right. We were talking about this earlier. The left will tell you things didn't happen. The right will agree on what happened, but disagree on what they mean. Mm-hmm. I find that, I was thinking about this, and it's not absolute, but talking to Dave Smith, for instance, we're like, we agree X happened. And I'm like, yeah, but won't that will start to do Y. And he goes, no, Y's not going to happen. It's going to be Z. And so it's like, we agree on reality, but what the probabilities are where we argue. And so we get along. And then you see that clip with Destiny where he's like, they never said that vaccines were going to stop transmission. And it's like, Yes, they did. No, they didn't. Yes, they did. No. And then
Right,
someone
and then they
after
play the
the debate.
montage of everybody saying it. Yeah, exactly.
But you can't play the montage when you're live on Piers Morgan. So when the
Correct,
Democrats lie,
Well, the mistake people make is when I'm arguing with Destiny, I'm not arguing for Trump against Biden. I'm arguing against these bureaucratic institutions. My argument is the FBI treated Biden differently when he was doing a quid pro quo with your tax dollars to fire a prosecutor looking into his son's company. Once that prosecutor was fired, his son's company benefits immensely. And Destiny and the left's argument is, but you don't have proof that he did it for that reason. It's just coincidence that by firing that prosecutor, it ended up massively benefiting Hunter Biden's company. And my argument is, why didn't the FBI look into this and have a commiserate investigation till they did that Donald Trump with Russia collusion?
what they're saying now is, look, we know that they called D.C. asking for help dealing with the prosecutor who was investigating this company. And we know several months later, Joe Biden flew there and said, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion.
5 days later.
5 days later? I thought it was like 5 months.
They said, according to Devin Archer, literally when he says, I heard them say call D.C., which Archer assumes
was 5
Joe
days
Biden's-
later?
It was 5 days later he was on a plane. And Biden's assistant has said on
Right. But it wasn't. I'm pretty sure if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion was several months after.
Oh, no. That was, he flew to
Okay.
Ukraine. It was scheduled. It was 5 days later. Now, he announced it in his famous Council on Foreign Relations speech years later.
Right. So then they go, and that may have all happened, but you can't prove that Biden was told to do it and he did it for that reason. And it's like, yeah, well, that's not how we handle adjudication here. It's something called beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, think about, but I hate to wax on about this, but think about this. They say that, well, just because it could have personally benefited Hunter Biden, that doesn't mean that's the reason that Joe Biden did it. Therefore, no need for a special counsel. And yet, if you remember, the special counsel into Trump of Mueller was appointed because every Democrat, every Republican said, fire James Comey. Then they fired him, and people said, yeah, but Trump did it for personal reasons, possibly. So why doesn't that apply to Biden as well?
Let's read some more. We got Remy. He says, hi, Tim. I'm getting married tomorrow. I want to give a shout out to my beautiful wife, soon-to-be wife, Valencia. I love you, baby. Congratulations, good
That's
sir.
so great.
That's so cute. What a good use of a super chat. I really
That
like
is
that.
really good.
Tin Man says, 30 plus years, air traffic controller, retired. These kinds of incidents have been happening forever. The internet magnifies things. Agreed.
Yeah, people definitely turn their attention and look. Like when we had all the train wrecks.
Yeah. That's reassuring.
Muddy.
Yeah, there were a lot of train wrecks there for a minute.
But
Muddy-
apparently there are thousands, like over 1,000 every year.
Yeah.
Muddy Drip says, Boeing employee here. These issues coming up lately are maintenance issues by the airlines. Check warranties on airplanes. Interesting.
That's interesting too.
I saw a viral video where someone...
What did he say? That the planes are getting...
Warranties.
It's the maintenance. It's not the manufacturer. It's the airlines aren't maintaining them properly.
Oh, okay.
There was a story...
I had to get my whole brakes fixed.
There was a story
gotta
at
keep your car running.
O'Hare when I worked there where a guy crashed a tug into a plane. Which
tugboat?
No, a tug.
What's a tug?
Those are the things that they drive around at the airports to pull bags and move things. They're called tugs. And if you've ever played GTA, you can drive a tug. And anyway, I think what happened was he was not paying attention and he crashed into the back of a plane. It basically destroys the plane. You can't fly it anymore. And so he just pretended to black out. Yeah. So he just falls on the steering wheel and just sits there and waits. And then someone comes out and they're like, what happened? And he's like, oh man, I must have blacked out. And so they can't do anything because it's a medical emergency. If he said I wasn't paying attention, then they'd
Yeah, that was quick
get in
thinking by
serious
that
trouble.
guy. It's actually pretty smart.
I just blacked out. Where are we at? Duty Ron says, Tim, I remember seeing you at the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2012. I was an active NYPD detective. Here. Remember Hipster Cop? He retired. Do you guys know Hipster Cop?
No.
He was a community affairs, I think it's community affairs. I think he was a detective, but he wore these very fashionable outfits. You know, I don't know how to describe it. He had glasses and he was reported in the press as the Hipster Cop.
Was he wearing he wasn't wearing cop uniform? He was like a detective or something?
Yeah.
Street clothes? Wearing Versace out there?
Hipster Cop.
Like undercover at Occupy.
See, I thought of
It wasn't
like Reno
undercover.
911 when he said hipster cop. I thought like kind of a crazy outfit, but I've never heard of it.
Rick Lee. Hipster Cop. Yeah, look him up. You'll see the clothes he's wearing. He was a celebrity. He would walk around and the community of relations, the community affairs, NYPD, they're like supposed to try and talk and negotiate with protesters and stuff like that. And locals. Let's grab some more super chats while we're here. Beef Nasty says, guys, Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, Afghanistan, NATO, all of them. Our dollar is backed by war, control of goods. It's simple yet complex. Yup.
So he's in favor? He almost
I don't think he's saying he's in favor.
Okay. I mean, I agree with him. I would just let the dollar fall and also end the wars.
Katie Maria says, Zion cast Tim getting so defensive of Israel as usual. See, that's what I'm talking about. When I'm like, I don't understand why we're funding Israel or any one of these other countries, and I don't care for any one of these singular countries. I think we should stop funding all of it. People go, you're defending Israel, and I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Because
well, Tim, to his point, I will say, I don't think you're Ziocast, but I do think Zioncast. But
no, that's Ben Shapiro.
So I remember when I was on here last time. You were ready, and we went in together on Zelensky and on Victoria Nuland and on the people who perpetrated the war in Ukraine. I don't hear you going in on Israel in the same way. And I just, that I think that's what, I get that you're not against the funding, but why aren't you, you're a vehement critic of Zelensky. Why not Netanyahu?
Right now, what is the principal war where we have a world leader with nuclear weapons threatening to nuke us right now?
But do you think Iran has any nuclear capabilities? And I actually don't know.
I know that.
I know we've lied about it a lot.
I know that we launched Stuxnet with Israel to blow up their nuclear capabilities. And I know that while we are effectively in proxy war with Iran, have been trying to invade Iran, it's a huge, huge mistake. I think we shouldn't be funding any of these foreign wars. I think I'm tired of the moralizing on Israel-Palestine, and too many people are deeply obsessed with this one country.
Okay, fair enough. I agree. I mean, from nuclear weapons, from our standpoint, obviously,
the moralizing is what bothers me the most.
Okay, and because let me ask you on the moralizing, why does that bother you?
It's an obsession.
But if it is, if it's true that it's a moral atrocity, why are you angry at the people trying to make that case?
How many people have been killed in China? How many Uyghur Muslims?
People make that case too. There's different people.
List to me the atrocities of the world and tell me why I should care about one over the other.
Well, because one, we're funding, and that's the one that Israel's perpetrating.
Sudan.
We're also funding that one. It's smaller and less people know about it, but it's the same sort of thing. Yeah, I mean,
the issue with Sudan is that
people should be angrier about the atrocities that they're being forced to fund.
And that's why it's I don't care for any one of them. Yeah. Stop spending the money. The Sudan thing is not like we're funding war, although I think it's fair to say you can look in the budget and see that we are, but $1 billion in quote unquote developmental assistance. I'm like, is that what they call war funding? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right. And so then in Israel's case, 14 times that just in the last year. But if you go back decades, it's probably way more. So wouldn't that therefore anger you more?
My point is someone goes, hey, should we be funding Israel? No. And they go, okay. And then they go, should we be funding Ukraine? I go, no. I say, should we Taiwan? No. Sudan? No. And then they go, do you know how many kids are being killed every single day in Israel? And I'm like, do you know how many kids are being killed in Sudan? They go, no. And I'm like, why are you coming to me every day with this one place and knowing nothing about anything else?
Okay. Well, then in that case, I would say look more. You should have Whitney Webb on, like that guy said. It's a great idea. And look more into the Epstein Mossad theory. And, for example, Alex Acosta said he belonged to intelligence when he let him off. Dershowitz got that deal. Dershowitz also got the dancing Israelis off, if people know about that. Dershowitz said on Kim Iverson's show, I've been working for the state of Israel long before you were born.
Well, he's a defense attorney.
Dude, I just got to tell you,
I'm just saying, there's more than what I just said. I mean, there's the Robert Maxwell, who was literally Mossad and was like an arms trafficker for Israel.
Here's what I think.
Who's Ghislaine's dad. But so my point is, you should look into things like that and realize they do have a lot of influence over this country.
I think
that would anger you more to be exploited, presumably.
I think Israel hires all of the anti-Israel people on purpose to create this faction of incessant annoying people on Twitter to push as many people as possible away from the issue.
But it's interesting. There's a difference between Sudan and Israel.
I get it.
I'm sorry that my arguments aren't working on you. I think Whitney Webb would be a lot better.
I would equate the Ron DeSantis supporters with the anti-Israel faction on X. It's like this weird, vicious, pit bull biting, snarling.
But I'm not trying to do that with you. I mean, have I done that tonight? I'm not trying to.
Not with you. But the point I'm bringing up with you is that, right now, if we're objectively analyzing global conflict, Ukraine receives the most money. It's a direct conflict between NATO and a nuclear power.
So I agree with you on all this. So,
and it is the most pressing military threat. And you made an atrocity moral argument about Israel without knowing the same details about Ukraine. I'm not saying you're not allowed to make that argument. I'm saying it.
I didn't know the exact number of
That's my point.
civilians killed.
And my point
last
is,
last year I could have. I mean, like that doesn't debunk like the whole argument.
Debunk. I didn't say debunked. I said what I see is for some reason a hyperfixation from too many people on one country when the United States is spending combined untold billions all over this planet on things we should not. And when you go to someone, Alex Jones, I saw him on C-SPAN a long time ago, and this was probably like in 2008 or something. And I can't remember what it was, but the camera guy, the guy reporting was like, oh, we've got Alex Jones. And he goes to the camera and starts screaming, people, you gotta listen to me. They're coming, they're taking your money, they're taking your income tax. And I was like, well, he just lost every single person he could have convinced.
No, I totally agree with that. That's a great point.
Can I give you two other examples of things that are different? Sure. Example one could be, and you tell me what you think of this. If the U.S. wasn't funding Israel, they would still be bombing Gaza. Whereas in Ukraine, if we weren't funding, they would have to come to the negotiating table.
I actually disagree. I think if we didn't, I mean, Ron Paul, also a courageous man when he was in the Congress, was actually willing to criticize Israel. He made the argument that actually if we cut off all funding to Israel, they might start playing nice with their neighbors because they right now they know that the U.S., even more so than Ukraine, they know that the U.S. is going to back them in a big regional war. So no, I think if we actually cut them off, they would perhaps stop bombing.
I don't think it's as clear as Ukraine. The other thing I'll say real quick is there are people in positions of power and certainly in certain cultural institutions that are on both sides of the Israel-Palestine debate. That's not the case with Ukraine. When we talk about Ukraine, it's because there is near uniformity from the left, from the right, from every institution, from students to entertainers. It's all, we got to back Ukraine, we got to back Ukraine. Whereas Israel-Palestine, you get lost in the shuffle. Chuck Schumer's out there. Chuck Schumer's out there today saying we need to get rid of Bibi. So it's not as if they're all in lockstep. In Ukraine, it's like everyone's in lockstep, so you need a countervailing voice.
There are like lefties in the media that still have influence.
We
Tim,
give money to 179 foreign countries.
Oh, it's wild. But Tim, what I would ask you is, do you not see the shift from Ukraine to Israel in kind of the U.S. foreign policy circles? That there is, and it's been harder for Ukraine to get the funding now because Israel's also on the table. Do you not see that shift?
Did you know
and does that not kind of make you go, oh, Ukraine might be winding down?
Did you know that the U.S. reduced its orders for ordnance, specialized ordnance for desert conflict, and switched it to Pacific conflict?
Is this like an executive order from the Biden administration?
There was
I can
military
see in the
budgeting
zeitgeist that there is a shift to the Indo-Pacific for sure.
So it's not Israel. It may shift now because how about I finish?
I agree.
Can I finish?
Okay.
It may shift to Israel because of what's going on, but in the mid to end of last year, the reporting that we covered was the U.S. had been ordering large amounts of missiles, specifically for the weaponry that we have in the Middle East, and they reduced dramatically those purchases and shifted towards naval weaponry and ordnance, leading many analysts to indicate the U.S. is gearing up for conflict with China over Taiwan, especially with the treaty that we have with the treaty we had with Australia, the deployment of U.S. personnel and as well to the Indo-Pacific. So that seems to be their main play. Plus, with the concern over Thucydides' trap and the likelihood of conflict with China, that seems to make a lot more sense, especially considering China is a nuclear power, has been working with Russia. We now have this two-pronged front where Israel is a regional conflict, which may rope in another one of the BRICS allies, Iran. That is still secondary. In fact, it may be a third step from Ukraine and Russia, then China, Taiwan, and then Israel. Right. So based on purchasing, based on scale, and based on historical precedent, it seems the bigger conflict is going to be China-Taiwan.
I agree. China-Taiwan is by far the scariest. The bright side is it hasn't started yet. I mean, your point of Israel is more underway, like a potential conflict with Iran is more underway than China-Taiwan. But I agree with you. If you listen to like bipartisan foreign policy staff, they are like the focus is 100% China, and that would be by far the worst. I mean, the U.S. in a direct hot war with China would be terrible, and we would all agree on that. So that's scary, and I hope we avoid it. But I really want to avoid all three because all three can go nuclear potentially. Iran's perhaps in the form of like a dirty nuke or something like that. But no, it's terrifying, and we should avoid all of these things. So I can't disagree with what you just said.
My final point on this is that there are a lot of people, if you go on X, where it's just like, holy shit, dude, calm down. What the fuck?
Well, there is literal like anti-Semitism too, where it's like you
And
know
I'm
they
not saying
make the
that,
charts
it's
of
like-
the Jews and in media and all that stuff.
There are people who like their emotions go from 0 to 11 when the issue comes up, and they start bashing their faces figuratively against the table when it's like no other issue causes that. But I want to read one last super chat. This was interesting. TRD says, New York Post, Don Lemon demanded Cybertruck $5 million advance, equity in X before Elon Musk canned him. Fact check confirmed. New York Post reports Don Lemon demanded Tesla Cybertruck $5 million advance, equity in X before Elon Musk canned him. So it's no wonder why Don Lemon was told to screw off.
Donnie.
Wow. My friends, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member by going to timcast.com and clicking join us to support our work directly. It's been a great week. We're really excited for all the new stuff. The skate park is officially done. The main move will be, I believe, the week of April 8th may be the official launch at the new studio. So we're really excited for that. And you can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Liam, you want to shout anything out?
You can follow me at Cosgrove_IV on Twitter. I wish we'd talked about the TikTok bill. I think it would have been more fun and less, high stakes. If you go to my Twitter right now, you will see Tucker Carlson just tweeted a video of me giving Dan Crenshaw a hard time on the Hill. That's kind of what I do. Is go to the Hill and interview congressmen and go to press briefings in DC and stuff. So. You can find me there, and sadly we didn't get to argue about TikTok, but off air, Tim and I were going at it on that too. So,
well, Tucker said Biden would have the power to ban any news site that challenges him, and that's factually false.
I think that's
fact check false.
I don't know if we have time to do this. Maybe we can do it in the
I'll keep it simple for you.
But
he can't ban any website.
Well, he can actually. So
no.
If they have 1 million monthly users,
so now you agree with me.
1 million monthly users, and only one user has to post stuff and be able to contribute. So that could be a news site. I mean, if you have 1 million monthly users,
first,
which isn't that hard.
Not any. That's factually false.
Right. Okay. 1 million monthly
Secondly,
users.
it doesn't ban the site. It requires a forced
divestment within 6 months,
and it has judicial,
which is
a judicial review provision,
just as authoritarian.
And it's to say outright the bill allows Biden to do this. My argument is it would be like going, Donald Trump is a nationalist and he is also a white man. Therefore, he's a white nationalist. And it's like, okay, well, that's like technically, semantically true, but it's not real.
No, but so not any, 1 million monthly users, but that like if you add the 1 million monthly users caveat, it is a true statement.
And it has to be connected to one of 4 countries. There's,
that's up to their claim to make. It just says controlled or at the direction of some. They said that about Zero Hedge in 2022 when the war broke out. And then you have to
look at legal jurisprudence as to whether someone can functionally just claim and it becomes legal. It doesn't. We know that with Trump and the insurrection clause in the 14th Amendment. So none of that even matters.
Right, you have a chance to petition it, but the president can claim that you're at the direction of Iran and then can ban your thing.
To state, the bill would give Biden the power to ban any news website that challenges him is factually incorrect.
With a million plus viewers.
No, it's factually incorrect.
If you add the 1 million plus, how is it incorrect?
And I can be a millionaire tomorrow if I buy a lottery ticket.
1 million monthly users is not that much. 1 million monthly users. I mean,
I'm not even arguing the sub paragraph.
What else do you need in addition to 1 million monthly users for that statement to be correct?
He cannot ban any website that challenges him.
Okay, he can force them to divest.
He can try to force certain websites to divest from resources and assets pertaining to one of 4 countries that have already been codified by Congress.
If he claims that the news organization is at the direction or control of
which doesn't
one
change
of those
anything
countries.
I said. It is factually incorrect to say that Biden could ban any. We're done.
Okay.
Hey, yeah, that was round 2. We got to hear that earlier tonight too. So, my name's Rob Noerr, Noerr. I am a conservative debater. I stream on Rumble, Twitch, YouTube. You can find me if you look up my name, Rob Noerr, in any of those places. I love taking and wrecking these left-wing streamers that think that they're somehow impressive debaters. They're not. I focus on corruption and sort of the 2-tier justice system. To me, more than any individual politician, Biden, Trump, Hillary, whoever, these institutions that exist in perpetuity that put their thumbs on the scale are more of a threat to our country than any individual politician. And so that's what I like to focus on. I was honored to come on here. I enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you so much for having me. Hope to do it again.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I should say that as well. I really do appreciate, and I know I've been argumentative and all that, but I really appreciate the invite. Thank you, Cassandra, for inviting me on. And
no, I agree. Come
I've
back
had a
anytime,
lot of
man.
fun. I'm not trying to lie in terms of this TikTok bill. But anyways, I really appreciate it.
I'll make
Thank you
one
guys.
last point on the TikTok bill.
And great to meet you three also in person for the first time. I'm sorry I've monopolized here. I'm an argumentative guy.
My last point on the TikTok bill. Yuri Bezmenov warned that communists are going to try to indoctrinate our youth and manipulate them. TikTok is the clearest example of them doing that. For some reason, people are against Yuri Bezmenov's warning at this point, which doesn't quite make sense. And I see the likes of Tucker Carlson and many other personalities coming out without actually breaking down the full context of the bill and saying things that I believe are gross misrepresentations or extreme exaggerations of what is likely going to happen, where the argument turns into, but the government is corrupt and does corrupt things. To which my response is, LavaBit was an email service provider that was providing secure services. The NSA approached them with a national security letter in 2013, and they were forced to shut down or comply with the government. This bill does not give more power to the already near absolute powers the government has, including the Obama NDAA indefinite detention provision, which allows them to hold secret military tribunals to rendition you in the middle of the night to an offshore location where you could disappear forever. And they claim that's been codified by Congress. This bill is stamp collecting relative to what the deep state and the security intelligence agencies already have. And that being said, Hannah Claire, you want to shout anything out?
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm so happy I got to be here so much this week. It's been fun to see everyone. Of course, you should absolutely follow at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram because that's where Scanner's news work goes out. I posted it's Women's History Month. None of the men in this room acknowledge that tonight, but I have a profile up about Melissa Mayer, the former CEO of Yahoo, and the controversy she caused among working moms. So please go check that out. I don't know if it's up yet, but it should be up soon. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Twitter at HCRimmel. I'm on Instagram at hannahclaire.b. Libby, so fun to see you.
It's great to see you guys. Great to be here tonight. You can find me at Libby Emmons on Twitter, and you can check out all the great work we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com.
Tim, real question on the communism thing to fight communism. I will ask this question, then I won't argue. Sir,
I have a life. I have to go home.
Don't you think it is kind of a communist tactic to be banning, a platform that millions of people are using to, post things and interact?
No.
That's not a communist tactic of banning a speech platform.
If China was selling designer drugs to our children, I'd say we should ban that product. And then if they came out and said, yeah, but it's not illegal in the United States, I'd be like, then we should make it illegal. You're selling drugs to our kids. I don't see that. I don't understand the issue of like, this country is our enemy who has like tried to destroy us and is super corrupt and is undermining our trade policy, our foreign policy. They're buying up our farmland. They're gutting us from the inside out. We desperately need to take action against them. And the only reason action can be taken now is because Democrats love Israel so much. They agreed to finally sign onto a bill that would do something about it. I'm also seeing tons of personalities sharing the Restrict Act, trying to claim that's the actual bill. And that's just like, why are so many people posting false things about this? I can only conclude that some people genuinely don't like the bill. I can respect that. Some people don't understand they're being misled and they're sharing provisions from the Restrict Act, which is wrong, or they're sharing only snippets. But I also do believe it is a fact. It is a fact that TikTok has been sending push notifications and telling people to go out and advocate and defend their platform. That is an example of an exertion of authority of a foreign power against us, which I think is horrifying. But that being said,
I think diplomacy
quick,
can
Kellen,
work with China.
go, quick, get to your outro.
China, the solution to Tim's point. I think diplomacy can work, but I won't argue any further.
We don't have an after show on Fridays, but what you guys should do as soon as we wrap is go over to Tenet Media and watch the Culture War, which we had with Rob this morning. Great conversation. You guys can follow me at Kellen PDL, and happy Friday.
All right. That wraps it up then, right? All right, everybody. We will see you all on Monday. Thanks for hanging out.
I'm done. Thank you, guys.